Hi, my name is Casey Snow. I go by Casey Snow Art most places online. I actually used to be a teacher myself. I was an elementary school art teacher, so if you pick up on elementary school art vibes, that would be why. I did that for 5 years, and I've been kind of left that career to do illustration and try to make my way here online. And only very recently have kind of gotten into Twitch streaming and like kind of using this platform as an education platform because I super agree. I think it's a great use of the platform. And I do more than just art education. So I do these practice sessions in the morning where we draw together and we learn how to draw, and I kind of share my struggle and invite other people to share. Do a lot of draw along stuff. Sometimes my community can talk me into a game. I don't play them too often, but usually once or twice a month, depending on various parameters if they hit them. And then I do some sculpting, and I'm actually about to get into doing some IRL like live sketching, like doing some sketch hikes. We actually just did a subathon to fund for an IRL streaming rig so that I live in Colorado, so I can go around and like do hikes and do plein air and invite people to draw with me, which I think will be really fun. But speaking of the vaquita, somebody in chat asked about. um, I've also been getting into conservation, like using this platform for outreach. And I'm pretty passionate about animals. I'm a big animal nerd. I nerd out about animals a lot on stream, and I actually went to TwitchCon last year to speak on some panels about using this platform for art education and conservation, how they all kind of tie together. If anybody wants to watch those, I can drop them in the chat. But here, if you want, I can show you
Yeah.
my life size vaquita. Um, so the vaquita is a. Let me rearrange myself here. The vaquita is a highly endangered marine mammal. There's actually fewer than 20 left in the world. This is basically full size. This one's like the size of a juvenile. They really get up to about 4 feet. This one is 3 feet long. Um, but this is basically life size. And they live down in the Sea of Cortez, also known as the Sea of California in Mexico, or the Gulf of California, excuse me. And this was actually 3D printed by Paleontologizing. I don't know if you are familiar with
Yes.
him. Yeah, he
Absolutely.
streams here on Twitch, and he handed this to me at TwitchCon, and then I spray painted like the face. I brought my airbrush with me and everything. It was kind of a collab, but he did a lot of it. But I kind of walked around with this for 3 days at TwitchCon, just spreading awareness. And we did a big Save the Vaquita event. Like I said, there's fewer than 20, and I feel like most people just don't even know that they exist. They're super cute. They're called the panda of the sea. They have that cute little eye spot there. And a lot of people, when they hear fewer than 20, they think, like, why bother? Is that too few to actually be sustainable? And we also have a command, exclamation point genetics, if anybody wants it. It'll take you to a paper that actually talks about how this animal is very unique in that it's more of an island species. It's been isolated for so long that it's kind of immune to genetic bottlenecking, is what they call it. So even though its population is very small, they did tests and they did studies, and it turns out, based on the DNA, that they can actually make a comeback as long as there's more than 5 individuals. So we're kind of really close to that line, but they do have a chance to make a comeback. So the whole point of the Save the Vaquita event was to raise awareness. I was on the front page of Twitch for it. I actually pushed for partners so I could be on the front page of Twitch to talk about it. And we had like 30 other streamers. We had education streamers and gamers and science streamers and art streamers. Like tons of people came together to stream for Vaquita Save the Vaquita Week is what we called it. And we raised over $14,000 to help save
Wow.
this animal, as well as like I think it was like 21,000 viewer hours basically across Twitch, which is pretty cool. I don't know. I'm pretty excited every time I see somebody talking about the vaquita because it seems like more people know about it now because of the event, and we're gonna do it again this year. So I'll be doing an all call for that this summer sometime. Anyway, that's the vaquita.
Fantastic. Great. Recently, one of our interviews was with Shark Geek, a member.
Oh
I don't know if you're
yeah,
familiar with them. We had a great
I
conversation with
am.
them. That's how I learned that it's just the white shark, no longer the great white shark, because there's no lesser shark. So they're like, well, why are we calling it the great white shark? It just
There
gives
you
them a
go.
big head or something. Uh,
Yeah, I'm a
but you were
yeah
talking
Sharky.
about, yeah, Sharky's great. Paleontologizing is great, which is, a great reminder that there are fantastic people out there doing great educational stuff. Uh, so yeah, make sure to give all those kinds of people a follow. You were talking about games, and since we mentioned Hollow Knight and Ori, I do have to mention Gris. If you have heard of Gris,
I
Gris,
have, yeah.
I wept openly on stream at the
Oh,
end of that game. I have to say if there is any game with great art direction that I recommend people play, it's Gris. Even though, uh,
Mhm.
you know, it might be a little much for some people. God, I was moved to tears. Yes,
Oh,
Smithsonian Gris is so beautiful. Absolutely. Uh, Poisoned Mouse wants a ferret full presentation. Well, the next time their birthday comes up, maybe I'll do a whole lesson. And we'll just talk about ferrets. We'll talk about
there you go.
all the great things about them, and they are used in research. They have very similar um, reaction to the flu. So we
Hmm,
test flu vaccines effectiveness on ferrets.
interesting. Did
So
not
yeah,
know that.
they basically have the same kind of respiratory response. So a little bit of education for people there. Uh,
Yeah.
but we're talking about art and education. So the first thing I like to ask for any person that I interview is, what got you into the field you're in? So did you always want to be an artist? Did you always want to be an artist growing up?
Oh, man, yeah, I mean, yeah, I would say yes. I've always loved drawing. I feel like, I a lot of people ask, like, "When did you fall in love with drawing or when did you start drawing?" And I kind of am of the opinion that every kid likes to draw, it's just some of us don't stop, and I was the don't stop kid, and I just even though I went into teaching, I always kind of in the back of my mind, like, knew I kinda wanted to try doing illustration and try to make it as an illustrator, so I would say, yeah, I've always really wanted to do this, but I did take the long route to get here. I was, too nervous/broke slash broke to just go full into art school or jump right into the art industry out of high school, so I went the I guess you could say safer route in some ways to go teaching, but it was more just like, um, I figured if all else fails, I can always keep my teaching certificate and then always find a job if I needed
Yeah.
to. So it was kind of like my, like I always kind of wanted to be a teacher too, to be honest. Even when I was a kid, it was one of the things I would put on my list of like, what do you want to be when you grow up? A teacher. So it's not like I didn't enjoy teaching, but just even while teaching in the back of my mind, I always have this desire to like tell stories visually and to create. And so, and ultimately, that's once I paid off all my student loans and, saved up some money, that's what I did after I, taught for a few years, so
I feel you there. I taught for a little while and actually I'm not teaching currently because there was more money in doing other stuff because let's face it, they don't make a whole lot of money. And
yeah.
teaching health, we get kind of lumped in with arts as well in terms
Oh,
of funding
yeah.
cuts. They're sort of
Mm,
considered the specials, arts, PE,
yeah.
music, and they're the first to go when budget,
Mhm.
needs the axe, despite the fact that all three of
Super
those,
important. Yeah.
they increase student test scores in every other area. Students who get art education perform better in every other subject.
Mhm.
I love when that meme goes around of the recorder and people are like, "Why did I learn this as a kid?" So many reasons. There were so many reasons they gave you that stupid little recorder to play. It was not just to keep you busy. It was good for your brain.
Right. Yeah, creative problem solving is what the arts teach, and that is so important in literally every aspect of your life, and taking that away and just doing book learning is so detrimental. Don't even get me started unless you want me to on the
I
teacher
am happy
tirade
to.
'cause
It seems like,
I can do it.
we do
Yeah.
these interviews and most of the people are involved in some level of education. I mean,
Mhm.
when that topic comes up, we're all on that same
Everybody
wavelength.
I'm sure. I'm sure, yeah. Ugh,
So
such a
having
problem.
been on the teaching side of things as an artist, what did teaching art teach you as an artist? I thought that was a clever question when I came up with it.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, I feel like the old adage of just like you learn while you teach, like teaching reinforces your own understanding of your topic. It also requires you to have a deep enough understanding that when you get a question, you can answer that question with some confidence, right? So like even though I was an elementary school teacher, I did a lot of stuff with color theory with my kids, and I wanted to make sure that I understood what I was talking about, and even just like practicing color theory with them and explaining it to them over and over year after year, it made my understanding of color theory a little bit deeper. Even though again it was just elementary school level, still it was K through 5, and especially with the older kids, you can get into a little more nuance with stuff like that. But man, teaching I feel like has so many other applications for just for my personal life. I People don't ever believe me when I tell them this, but I'm pretty sure like looking back that I had and maybe still have a pretty intense level of like social anxiety and being forced to get up in front of a classroom and just speak, even when they're kids. Like it really kind of forced me to confront that fear of public speaking and just like of being like in front of a group of people. I literally shook for the first month of teaching, even though it was just elementary school kids, like anytime I had to talk. And I have this problem where where I'll speed up and I'll talk a little faster if I'm nervous. And I'll never forget my first week of teaching. One of my students, like, I think she was a 7-year-old, like, raised her hand slowly. I was introducing myself. They had just gotten in, and she, like, raises her hand. She's like, "Can you slow down? Like, I can't understand what you're saying." I felt so bad, but, so yeah, teaching not only has helped me, I think, with art in a lot of ways, and just, having access to materials to play with all the time was great, but just, like, on a personal level, like, being a little bit better with, like, I guess, putting on the teacher mask and being comfortable presenting information without worrying too much, the way that I would have probably prior.
Yeah, and it certainly helps in streaming, even though streaming can be sort of
Yes.
low impact. I
Yeah.
stream as a VTuber, so I have the extra additional mask
Oh,
between me and the viewers, which I do for a reason because sometimes I talk about some sensitive topics. We'll talk about mental
sure.
health, and it gives people that sort of distance to feel okay about talking about certain things. But even doing that, it's such great practice in talking to people about these really anything. And even if it's just learning art, not just learning art, but
Mhm.
that can be embarrassing to talk about. A person struggles with art, asking about, what things that they need help with. Um, as a teacher, if one kid raises a hand and has a question, it means at
Right.
least three or four other people have that question. And that's very hard
Mhm.
for especially younger kids to get over. Uh, so
For
that's
sure.
extremely useful for the streaming context. But
Yeah, well, and I also feel like elementary school especially, it's kind of a joke, but not really. I feel like I'm pretty well prepared for a Twitch chat in a lot of ways because there's a lot of similarities to, like, leading a classroom and, like, being in charge of a stream, especially if you're trying to share information. And I'm sure you noticed this too, but I feel like with, streaming especially, I feel like you do have to kind of repeat yourself a fair bit because people aren't always there at the start of stream, and then they come in later and they have the same question, and you don't wanna keep rehashing, but at the same time, you wanna address every curiosity, at least I do. And so I find that I end up, I've figured out a good elevator pitch, I think, for almost every topic that I discuss pretty regularly, to where I can condense it into just, like, a little bit of an idea, which is helpful too. Yeah.
yeah, and it is a lot like a classroom. It's group dynamics and group behavior management. Hopefully, it's not too much behavior management, but that can be a problem too. And
Mods
uh,
help with that, yeah.
yeah, mods are very useful. I
Mods
would
are
never
great,
forget
shout out to the mods.
one of the first streams I did. There was a person who was chatting away, seemingly having a good time, and then we were playing a game in which someone was talking about mental health. Of like they were calling someone crazy. It was an Ace Attorney game, and they weren't comfortable with people using the term crazy because they had an
Mm,
experience with
that's fair.
institutions. And I didn't catch that in time because I wasn't used to watching the chat and I didn't have a mod at the time. And then
Mhm.
other people in the chat were like, "Oh well, that's stupid. Who cares?" And but by the time I saw the chat, they had said, "Well, if nobody cares about my feelings, I'm going to leave." And they left. I never saw them again. And that's always stuck in my head of like, wow, this is just like a real. This is not just the internet. This is just like a real life class where people come
Mhm.
with their own insecurities, they come with their own problems, and you might need to do some behavior management just like you would in a real life classroom. So I think the two experiences, teaching and streaming, are a lot more overlapped than people would think.
For sure, yeah. And, that is, like, one of the challenges I think of streaming because, like, in some ways it's kind of it can be awkward and also, like, unfortunate some of the things that happen because, like, I think of streaming, like, and the way that I behave in another person's chat is I think of, like, we're all in a room and, like, when you say something in chat, it's almost like you're standing up and speaking that into the room. So, like, I personally try to monitor my behavior in that regard. It's like, would I stand up in front of, 20 people, 30 people, whatever, and say this thing or not, or would that be a private conversation? But then the downside of that is if you have a bunch of people talking, like you said, you can miss stuff. Like, I miss stuff all the time. And I try to tell people like, "Hey, if I skip over you, it's more than likely not intentional. So please feel free to repeat." But you don't always have a time to say that like every 20 minutes, depending on how fast chat is moving. That's really unfortunate that that happened, but it's good that you had like a takeaway from it, you know.
Yeah, it's a learning experience for us as well as the streamer or the
Mhm.
teacher, um, because whether it's bullying or people's personal issues, they look to you as the authority figure, even as the streamer. Like you're the face that everyone sees, and there are
Yeah,
no other faces in the stream. It's just sort of you.
true. Yeah,
It becomes parasocial, no matter what you're doing,
it can. Yeah. It can.
but that can be
But
useful too.
yeah, I'm still kind of trying to like I said, I'm kind of newer to like more streaming more broadly. I actually started streaming art on Twitch in, like, 2017, but I was a bad Twitch streamer in a lot of ways in that not I don't wanna say bad, but just, like, I wasn't taking full advantage of the platform because I was too afraid to, like, put myself out there, so I didn't go in anyone else's chats. I didn't, like, go try to meet anybody. I didn't, like I didn't try to join any clubs or anything. I was just, like, too afraid to be perceived, but I also knew that I should stream for accountability because I felt like if I say I'm gonna do this thing and then I do it for this amount of time, I'll do it, was kind of always been my mentality because I'm an art streamer. But I really missed out on so many, like, connections and things, and so, like, it's only been until pretty recently, like, after I got involved with a lot of this the education streamers here on Twitch or the art streamers and, like, joined a bunch of Discords, it's like it's really gotten, like I've had to kind of quickly figure out how to navigate a bunch of things because I have found that once you get involved, like, especially to, like, an existing, Twitch community, people are generally very I have found anyway, very welcoming, and especially in, like, the art and the education sides of things for the most part. There's been a few exceptions, but for the most part, I find people to be extremely, like, curious and enthusiastic, and, like, those are my people. You know, like, those are the people who, like, really wanna, like are passionate about the thing they're talking about or streaming. But it's brought with it a lot of, like, "Oh, shoot, what do I do about, like, like, people reading into what I'm saying?" You know, especially, as a female streamer who uses a webcam, like, there are some things I've had to learn how to navigate. And, like, if I could go back and do it again, I don't know if I would stream with a webcam. Um, like, there's pros and cons, but since I had already done it, I didn't feel like there was any sense in, rolling back and doing, like, a VTuber or something, but I don't know, it's a strange place to navigate in some ways, and I'm still kinda figuring that out. But, I do find that the chat also can help me, at least for me, set the tone. Like, I'm very fortunate, I've met some really great people, and the people who tend to hang out in my channel are typically very, like, loving and welcoming and, like, uh, kind of can help me, like, if I miss something in chat, there's been many times I've seen people, like, answer a question that I missed or, like, reassure somebody that I'm not mad at them or, like, just because I didn't see their message, so, like, that can help too. Um, but yeah, it's tough. It's tough.
Pretty interesting space to be in. But getting back to the art world,
Mhm.
I've never really done a lot of drawing, so I have no experience whatsoever. But one thing that I always see come up is people say they can't draw, and I've heard artists
Yeah.
say that that's not what you mean.
Yes.
What do people actually mean when they say they can't draw?
So, okay. So here's I can give you like my very quick spiel on this. So I do this thing called the art gym in the morning. It's a study session for artists or for people who want to learn to draw. We have a motto. You can see our horse. We did horse studies this morning, so our horse is saying the motto today. But it says, "Get the bad drawings out." Okay, this is kind of like to me as a teacher, this is I think part of why people don't learn to draw. Because here's the thing, like, so I taught elementary school, right? I've seen kids as young as 3 and 4 all the way through, like, 12, and I've watched a lot of their art progress, and there's this cutoff that starts to happen with the kids who continue to draw and the kids that stop. And my theory with this is, at some point, you become self-aware. You become aware that other kids might draw differently than you in a way that you perceive as better, or maybe they think about things in a way that you don't and you start to decide, oh shoot, they can draw and I can't draw, and then they stop drawing. And I'm actually planning on doing a stream about this soon with another streamer potentially who would know a little bit more about the cognitive science of this. But basically, have you heard of the term? I'm sure you're familiar with the term like schema,
Yeah.
like how we can have schematics, right? So in art education specifically, there are actually schematic stages you go through, like developmentally with art that you can track. It's very, 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 very retrackable. I saw it for years with my students. Like so, for example, I don't know if your stream. Can you guys see what I'm drawing here? Let me scoot that over a little bit. So like when you're a kid, like when you first start to learn to draw, basically, you're gonna have some variation of this, and like this is what kids will draw as like this is mom or this is dad. They don't really understand the parts, but they understand that mom and dad have a face with eyes and a mouth. Sometimes this will be hair, and then like the longer ones are arms. And you'll see like most kids at around age 2 going through this stage. And then they move on from that and eventually you start to get like these wobble shapes where it's like, "Oh no, mom and dad have a body." And then there's like sometimes they have shirts and then sometimes they have legs and you start to see these really funny shapes emerge. Right? So these are different trackable schematic stages. A lot of people get to this stage, what we would call the stick figure stage for people who don't teach art, but basically, this is like the symbol making stage. You're not really drawing a person here; you're making a symbol of a person. So this is that stage, and then a lot of people at this stage they'll start to look around because they're about 7 or so, and they start to look around and say, "Hey, wait a minute! Like Susie over there, instead of doing a symbol, has actually tried to take that weird shape and, like, turn it into, like, a person, and maybe they actually have figured out that, oh, people have, like, a body and people have, like, parts, and it can start to look a little bit more like a person, and they think, "Oh, I can't draw, and Susie can draw." And so then they decide to stop drawing. And a lot of people, this is as far as they wanna get, is the symbolic stage. There's plenty of adults that'll say, "All I can do is a stick figure." And it's like, well, you just never made it past the symbolic stage, which is fine. Some people never want to. Like, this might be as far as you wanna get, is just that representational visual, communication of symbols. But for those who want to, you can always move past the symbol stage. The problem is we're self-conscious individuals, and to get from this, right, to being able to draw a horse, you have to do a lot of this, right? You have to get the bad drawings out over and over and over. Every artist will tell you, um, they weren't just born being able to paint the Mona Lisa. Like, being able to do this has taken literally, like, people will ask me, "Oh, how long did it take you to draw that horse?" And I know what they mean. What they mean is, like, minutes today. But what I like to tell them is my entire life. It took me my entire life to draw this horse. So, hopefully that can kind of, like, frame the perspective a little bit. When artists say that anybody can draw, they don't mean necessarily in this moment right now, maybe not to your skill level that you
Mm.
prefer, but anybody can learn to do this, because that's really all it is. It's like any skill, it takes time and it takes desire, and those are the things that people don't always have, time or desire, and that's fine, but you can learn to do it. So that's my little short spiel on that.
Yeah, that is something that I've taken into account when I commission art because in the VTuber world, you have to commission art in various phases. And people think, well, it's only going to take them however many hours to make it. You're, paying like per hour. It's like, no, you're paying for every minute they've spent practicing to get to the skill level to be able to give you the thing that you're commissioning. And it's
Mhm.
sort of the same with any kind of labor. Like as a teacher, they think, well, you're sitting in front of the class for 8 hours, you're getting paid for that. No, you're being paid for all of the years you spent learning how to teach,
Mhm.
all of the time
Yeah.
that you've spent practicing and honing that skill. It's like any kind of labor. And I think there's the disrespect of artists in the sense that commission prices are high right now. Well, yeah, because it takes a lot of work to get that good. And there are a lot of great artists out there to compete with. And so I guess that leads me to my next question is now that you're illustrating, that's got to be a competitive market and difficult field to live in.
Yeah, and I mean, frankly, so I just went full-time. I quit my day job in December, and then a lot of crazy stuff has happened since then, but I just went full-time a few months ago, basically. There's been a lot of crazy interruptions, but, um, long story short, the only reason I was able to make that decision is because, frankly, right now, the majority, like, Twitch has created this, like, safety net for me, because I'm able to put my work out there, like, prove that I'm making my work, like, in a time of AI generated images, like, it's really important that artists can prove they make the work. But I've been very, very fortunate to find people who are interested in supporting what I'm doing, and I'm making a very, like, scraping by and paying rent basically. But between my Patreon that I've had for a long time, commission work, and Twitch, I'm like paying rent, you know, and I'm hoping to make that grow as the year goes on. But I wouldn't be able to have made the full jump to full time, I think personally, without all of these safety nets. And it is hard to do just commission work, but quite frankly, I think it depends on the artist. But like for myself personally, I would love to get to a place where I don't really need to take commission work to make ends meet. That's kind of the long term goal, right? For any artist is to work on your own project. I've got web comics I'd like to work on, and I've got illustration series I'd like to do, maybe a book someday. There's so many things I'd love to do. But when you take client work of any kind, whether it's private commissions or a company, or maybe you're working on work for hire for a contract or something, that every time you say yes to a project, you're saying no to other projects. And it's kind of one of the things I think people who commission artists maybe don't always consider is, like, by saying yes to whatever you're working on, means you're basically having to turn down because of time, other opportunities as well. So, um, my goal is to try and make it work with illustration in a few ways that actually maybe aren't the traditional path. And I feel like I've just been kind of accidentally set up for this with Twitch. Um, but yeah, it is tough. It is tough. I was when I first moved out to Colorado, I was full-time freelance, and I was just trying to make it on commissions, and that is freelance is very feast or famine. Like, some months you'll have tons of clients, and then some months you'll have 0, and it's just, like, planning around that is so stressful. Um, So, yeah, thank you for commissioning artists also, by the way, and to anybody out there who does commission artists. It's, especially right now, a very tough time. Um, Prices are higher because it's competitive, because the economy stinks, and, because people aren't getting the work that they were getting because of generative AI, especially, like, freelancers. And then you have other websites that are sort of like a race to the bottom style commission sites. So, yeah, it's not easy. Um,
Yeah, I know a lot of people in the VTuber sphere are very happy about VGen getting a way to
mm,
sort of sort and search for artists that are completely free of AI, and um,
yeah, yeah.
that was definitely beneficial. Guys, I was going to ask about getting through the ugly phase, and then you sort of perfectly nailed that with the talking about the schemas and the repetitions. So
Yeah,
excellent
no
there. Did
worries.
the next one I had was, did teaching make you more disciplined as a student yourself of art, or is it like me where I'm my own worst student?
I think teachers are terrible students in general, just the same way I think that doctors are terrible patients.
Yes.
I think it's
Yeah.
a very similar mentality. Um, I will say teaching for me anyway, it did open me up a little more to traditional media. I have been a digital artist for most of my life. I got my first Wacom tablet when I was 14, and I basically just kinda went at it ever since digitally. But teaching in a public school, like, you need to teach the kids how to use all kinds of mediums. I did actually incorporate digital into my classrooms, even though they're elementary. I actually wrote a grant to get a whole bunch of little Wacom bamboo tablets, and we had little classroom laptops that they could play on, and I made them use, at the time, Open Canvas, which was a free drawing program, but it forced me to learn how to use, like, watercolor and types of clays I hadn't used before, and learn how to use a kiln, like, I got to learn a lot of that stuff because of teaching. So I definitely think I've become more open-minded to, like, and less intimidated by, I should say, like, different types of mediums. I'm actually, hoping to get more into, like, gouache and stuff on those plein air sketches this year, and kinda play more with traditional media that way. But yeah, as far as, like, open to learning, man, I feel like because I've taken commissions before, there's, like, a certain type of I think, like, bell curve maybe, or, like, learning path you have to go through. As an artist, you can always tell an artist who's never worked on a team or never taken client work because they don't take feedback well, or if they're kind of, like, early stage, early career, and then, like, over time, the more you work with clients and the more you take feedback, the better you get at receiving feedback and knowing what to do with it. Um, so I would say maybe that gave me a little bit of a leg up because I had taken commissions before. Uh, but yeah, teaching itself, I don't know. I tend to, like I said, I tend to think teachers as a whole are not the best students because we feel like we have to spend all the time delivering the information, not receiving the information. But being an open-minded person is something I strive to be. So hopefully, I'm not too bad.
Yeah, I certainly struggle with the discipline aspect. I used to do, some personal training, and personal trainers are also generally their own worst clients. Don't take advice
Oh,
well. We don't take feedback well. We think we know everything. Somebody
yeah.
tells us, you need to take a rest day. I don't need to do that. Like we're different than other human beings when we're not. And I think that's professionals in any regard. If you see people in the chat talking about, do lawyers make their own worst
Yep.
clients? I would say they probably do, because it's the sort of enough, just enough to be dangerous
Just
to
enough.
yourself,
Yeah.
sort of.
Yeah. To think you know it all. And
Yeah,
I kinda think that's a human trait thing. I feel like that's not even, I think humans in general, we just have a lot of pride. We just have a lot of pride. And we tend to wrap up our identity, I think, in a lot of the things that we pour ourselves into, and I think that's part of the problem, right? Like, teaching, as you know, is not just a job, it is a lifestyle. They don't tell you about that when you go into the classroom, but it's totally a lifestyle. And I can see how people could take it a little more personally than they need to if somebody kinda tries to correct their teaching or tries to correct them on a fact or like a methodology. But, um, yeah,
yeah.
being able to give and receive it well is
Uh,
important.
Rao is in educational support, can confirm the only people who follow directions worse than students are teachers. Rao
Yeah.
has some personal
I'm su
experience in that regard. I can probably
I'm so
confirm that.
sorry, I'm sure. Yeah.
One of the things I saw that you talk about is telling stories through artwork and solving visual problems. That sort of stood out to me from your bio and various things. When you start an illustration, what are you thinking about first? What are you thinking about initially in terms of solving that visual problem? Is it design? Is it the feeling? Is it the story it's trying to tell? The composition? Where does it start when you're trying to solve that visual problem?
Yeah, so, like, identifying the problem you're trying to solve is, I think, the root of most artwork. Even with, like, graphic design, which for those who don't know, like, graphic design and illustration, totally different sides of, like, the art brain or the art coin. They still have similar methodologies, but very different approaches. But even with, like, something like graphic design, like, what is your problem? Like, okay, you're designing a logo, what for? What do you need to communicate? With illustration, like with this piece here, I wanted to do something for Year of the Fire Horse, but I was like, "Okay, how can I make this more interesting than just, like, basically Rapidash fan art or Ponyta fan art?" Which is, like, I feel like what you're gonna see a lot of for that kind of thing. And I was like, "Okay, well, maybe what could I do? Lava. Lava is hot. I've never seen a lava horse. Maybe I'll do a lava horse." And then kind of growing from that, like, "Okay, how do I solve the problem of making that interesting?" And then going through the thumbnailing process of, like, sketching out different, compositions, right? We call those thumbnail sketches. So running through a few of those and just kind of like building it up. I think there's this misconception for people who aren't artists, or maybe even if you're a beginner artist, there's this misconception that like artists have this picture in their head and then they just copy it and put it on the page. You hear it a lot, like people saying, "Oh, like I really admire that you can just draw what's in your head like that." And I see how it can look like that from the outside. Like you see an artist standing there with this beautiful image, and you're like, "Wow, how did you come up with that?" But what you don't understand until you start doing it yourself is that art, it sounds so, like, hoity-toity to say, but art really is a journey. It's like you start with this problem, and then it's almost like writing a story. It's not like you don't end with the same thing you started with when you first start outlining. As you start to outline that story, other ideas come to you, and you're like, "Oh, let me explore that path. Like, what happens if the character does this?" It's just like that with art, It's like as I'm drawing this lava horse, I'm like, "Oh, wait, what if there was a river of lava?" And so then I changed that around, or like, "Oh, wait, what if there was smoke in the back?" Or, "Oh, wait, what if it was posed this way or that way?" And it kind of reveals itself to you as you go. Um, and I don't know, I don't know if that totally answers the question, but yeah, that I would say that's kind of the process. You start with the problem or the story. A lot of times I like telling stories with my work, and then just try to figure out how to solve that using visual medium.
I think it makes perfect sense to me. Right now, I'm in the midst of trying to write a novel, and that process is
Cool.
basically the same. I didn't have like the
Yeah,
idea in my head. There
right.
was a feeling, and then you start writing, and then things are totally different than maybe your initial sketch in your head was. But it's
Right.
it's it's a journey. The characters are so much different than I would have expected because they start interacting in your head during this journey, and you're like, they wouldn't actually say what I thought they might have said initially because that wouldn't make sense because you can't have it
Yeah.
all in your head right away. Um, but to tie in writing about it, since I also saw something where you talk about book covers and interior illustration. Since I'm going to be commissioning art at some point of a book cover potentially, what is that sort of the difference that you were talking about? Like, what makes a really good book cover versus an interior illustration?
Yeah, so book cover design is it can feel a little clunky sometimes as an illustration because you end up with you have to plan for the text, right? Like in a book cover, it's a little bit more on the graphic design side. Now, depending on the artist you hire, some artists won't do the graphic design like the layout part. They'll give you the image and then you need to go either do it yourself or hire a designer to make the text work. But most book cover artists are going to account for if it's a wraparound cover, like where's the spine gonna go? If it's a jacket cover, where it needs to be longer so that the insides fold in, like, okay, how far does the illustration go onto that? And then like what all those dimensions, thinking about like the trim and the bleed. And if you're doing an interior, you got to think about the gutter. Like if it's a full page spread, you got the gutter of the book, you got to plan around that so that you don't have important information stuck in the crack of the book,
Yeah.
and all that kind of thing. So it's just different problem solving. And then of course with book cover design, some people want like illustrated book covers. You see this a lot in like fantasy books, and then you also have like the modern fiction where it's a lot of like very graphic design heavy, like silhouettes and layouts, and it just sort of depends on what you're looking for. And something too, what I always tell people when they're looking to hire an artist, like look at their work first. And I'm sure you do this, but for anybody out there who's thinking about hiring an artist for a project, especially a book, I actually have a little FAQ that I link people to when they ask me to do anything for a book. It's like, "Okay, here, check this out, and then make sure you know that I'm the artist you want," because there's this misconception that, "Oh, you draw?" Like, I can't if I had a penny for every time somebody was like, "Oh, you're an illustrator, I've always wanted to illustrate a book. Would you illustrate my book?" The number of times that happens and people just have, like, 0 concept of what that even means. They don't have a marketing budget. They don't have any like they don't have a manuscript finished. Um, just have no idea of what it costs to do any of that. And they have no idea if my style, more importantly, even fits the vibe of what they're trying to illustrate. Like what if all my work is like gothic demons and you wanna make a kids book? You're just assuming that because I'm an artist, I can just draw whatever, and some artists can, but, like, there's people who are gonna be better at whatever you're looking for. So, like, find the artist that's already making work that looks like what you're looking for is, like, the biggest thing, but for book covers, I think especially figure out the vibe that you want for your book cover. And I would also say, like, this one can be tricky 'cause it depends on parameters and, like, how you're getting your books published and stuff, but a lot of the time, like, if you're going the traditional publishing route, they will find the artist for you, and a lot of people don't realize that when they want to publish. Now, if you're self-publishing, you have to finance the whole thing yourself. Um, but, th just yeah, take all those things into consideration, I guess. But the biggest thing is, yeah, I guess, depending on the artist, some artists, it's actually better if you give them more freedom. Like, if you see work that you like and you're like, "I want something like that." Eh, I will say for a lot of people, they kind of fall into this trap of, like, wanting to micromanage the artist, and sometimes they're gonna get a product that they're not quite happy with because here's the thing, like you said earlier, you're not just paying for a pretty picture, you're paying for that artist's tastes, their perspective, their experience, their time that they've spent developing their skills, like, I would say with most commissions, the more free rein you're willing to give an artist, the better the product is gonna come out. Because and that's why it's important to find an artist who you trust, whose work already speaks for itself. Um, so yeah, that I would say those would be the differences. Tight parameters versus loose parameters and your scope.
And you draw a lot of creatures, which is great because the next question was about that. Uh, a lot of that's very popular in anime and Western like cartoons, and very popular in the VTubing world of like getting creature designs. Do you have a pet peeve with people uh, sort of this the
Hmm.
difficulty people have in translating real life creatures to these fantasy creatures, and then there's no believability to it? Because I see a lot of people's like drawings, and it's like that would be really interesting, but it just doesn't make sense. How do you make creatures that make sense but are still mythological, mystical, like
Oh
supernatural?
man. Yeah. So I mean, it depends on what I would say. Even if you want to make something that looks totally unbelievable and magical, you are going to benefit from understanding reality. It's the same thing I would tell somebody who wants to learn how to draw in a certain style. Like, say you want to draw an anime style or you want to draw in Disney style or something. The more you study reality, the more believable your designs will be. Because here's the thing, all those people doing all these cool designs that you love, even though they look super fantastical or super stylized, those people are typically extremely proficient draftsmen and can do very, very well doing, like drawing from life. Because the reason they can break the rules is that they know the rules in the first place, right? So, like, if you want to stylize or if you want to create fantasy creatures, you need to know what the rules are so you can break them correctly, or not even correctly, but just believably, right? For example, like understanding horse anatomy and wing anatomy, lizard anatomy. You can pull all that together and make a really cool dragon, right? You can pull pieces of that stuff and you can know which muscles connect where and how to expand or contract them to make them look even more unique, but still somehow believable because it looks like something that you would actually potentially encounter maybe at a different scale in life. As far as pet peeves, I mean, one of my one of the ones that I probably talk about the most, I think, is feathers and wing anatomy. You can always tell when somebody has studied, even a little bit, has studied what wings and feathered wings specifically actually look like, versus somebody who's and I see this a lot in like manga. Or at least I used to more. I don't know as much now, but just it just looks like a fountain of fluff coming out of the
Mm.
back when they have like an angel character. Like there's no anatomy, no structure. You can tell they were just kind of like vibing with the wings look of feathers. But the difference when you can actually like know how a wing folds and how the feathers overlap and in what way they kind of layer on top of each other. It just lends so much credibility to your drawing, and it just makes it look so much better. So if I had a pet peeve, I wouldn't say it's a peeve necessarily. Like it doesn't that implies it makes me angry. I don't really get like frustrated. It's just like you can just tell. Like when I look at a piece, I can tell like that person has studied feathers and wing anatomy, and this person has not. I guess, but
That is important because some of my characters do, in fact, have
there you
feathers and
go.
wings. So, something to look out for when I'm looking for potential commissions. Uh,
There you
make
go.
sure that it has some, reasonable anatomy.
Yeah, and you can still, like, stretch and bend those things to look very it doesn't mean it has to look like a realistic wing, it's just there's certain laws of physics with, like, if the feathers are layered this way, like, on top of each other like this and the wind pushes, this feather's gonna go flying, it has nothing to push against, so it just, like, it won't make sense. Um, but you can still make them look large or small or pointed, or you can do a lot of things with it, but just having that little bit of believability with, like, grounding it just a smidge in reality. If anyone listening is interested in learning how to do creature design in a, like, a more scientific or believable way, there's this wonderful artist I talk about a lot, Terrell Whitlatch. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Terrell. I have some of her books right here if it's okay if I
Yeah, for
show
sure.
one. Um, she's actually the creature designer for Star Wars. This is one of her books. It's The Science of Creature Design, um, Understanding Animal Anatomy, and she also has another one. It's just Animals Real and Imagined, but it's just like full of like how do you make something like this, right? This is like I don't know if you can really see that, but it's like something that looks kind of realistic, but it's
Yeah.
it's not quite. Or like, this one, like you can see the hints of like horse and fish. But like, how do you connect those to make it look believable and yet alien? And she does a really great job explaining the benefits of this. So again, it's if anyone's interested, it's Terrell Whitlatch, and again, she has a great Star Wars art creature book as well. Um, yeah.
Yeah. I think that really lends itself well to what I think most people are looking for in that, which is you want a creature that looks uncanny, but uncanniness
Mhm.
comes from a combination of things being familiar enough, but
Right.
not really.
Yeah.
And that's what I think most people are
Exactly.
looking for. They want to invoke that in the viewer or the reader of something being uncanny from another world.
Yeah, you find especially with, like, early I mean, I was guilty of this too as a kid and as a young artist, but you find a lot of people hiding behind, "Oh, that's just my style." What they really mean is I haven't really deeply studied this, but I'm just stylizing to kind of hide the fact that I don't really know the anatomy of this animal, and sometimes you can get away with that. Like, I knew somebody who, really, really loved their work, who kind of got away with that for a long time because they were a very good artist. But once they started studying anatomy, it just got so much better. Like took that innate skill and that ability to kind of see things that can be interesting and just brought it to the next level because they were able to take like a little bit of reality, just that little touch of it, and then like you said, kind of combine it with like totally alien, the totally uncanny, and just make these incredible designs just with a little bit of study. It goes so far.
Yeah, a little bit goes a long way. Uh, Circling back a little bit to teaching, then, since you're doing so much great teaching right now, what is the big difference in teaching people online versus teaching people in person? I know they're two very different audiences. You were teaching young kids versus teaching your sort of
Mm.
general Twitch audience. What's your biggest takeaway in the difference there?
I mean, I guess I've thought more about the similarities, but as far as, like, the differences, I mean, there's a little more control, right, when you're in person. You kinda know who's gonna be in your group. You kind of, like you have a little more control about, like there's not, like, random things happening. Just kind of some of the functionality of Twitch can be tough sometimes, right? You have, like maybe your internet dies. Like, I was having horrible blue screen issues for most of this year, and I'm actually really glad they don't seem to be happening anymore because I wanna do more, like, co-streams like this, but I've been so nervous. Like, I don't have to worry about that when I'm teaching, right? I mean, some tech issues, sure. But I think you can also, like, you can kind of you get more people's attention, I think, in person. Like, somebody typically, if you're teaching, unless it's a free class or a public school environment, like, if I was teaching a seminar or, like, some kind of a lecture series, people typically, like, paid to be there or they're interested in being there, and so you have kind of their undivided attention, whereas in a Twitch streaming environment, you kinda have to keep things in some ways a little more surface level. Like, you can deep dive into things, I'm not trying to say you can't, but just because of the nature of the rotating door of Twitch and streaming and who's popping in and who's leaving, people pop in, I'm guilty of this. You pop into a stream, you listen for a few minutes on your lunch break, and then you have to skedaddle and you miss like 20 minutes of conversation, then you pop back in later. And so I think because of the nature of that, um, I would say it's easier to go deeper, I think, and to be a little more structured and intentional in person than it is with streaming. Whether not even just in person, but just like in a more traditional, even an online class, right? Like something a little more structured, I guess, is there's benefits to that. But the plus side, I think, of Twitch too is it does keep it because you keep it a little more entry level most of the time. At least I do. It makes it more it makes it easier for people to just hop in and not feel like they're totally lost, and like what you're talking about. Like, oh my gosh, I've never even like heard of any of these things before. What are these terms they're
Yep.
using? So I don't know. I guess there's pros and cons, but yeah, those would be, I think, the big for me anyway. I think that's the biggest difference. I don't know if you feel the same, but
I
that's how
certainly
I.
do, and it's something that I've really thought a lot about because of the nature of the way I do things. I do very structured. It's a
There
virtual
you go.
classroom for what I do,
Okay.
which does lead to there's going to be a lower ceiling
Yeah.
because you're not going to have as many people who can stick around for a full hour-long lesson about
Right.
whatever it is. If I'm talking about cannabis with, the young adult demographic of people who watch Twitch, you're going to get people who are interested, but then not as many people are going to be able to actually sit and watch a full hour-long
Mhm.
lesson about that. But when they do, you've got their attention because they've chosen to be there. They could be watching anything else. They could be watching any other video. They could be
Right.
watching TikTok AI slop, but they've chosen
Yeah.
to spend that hour watching what you're doing. And the benefit to that over like the structured like YouTube video, a produced video
Mm.
posted after the fact, you get the in-person interaction. People can ask
Right.
questions. I didn't catch what you meant there. I didn't, I have a question about this. You can ask it in real time. Someone watching your process on a piece of art can ask, why did you do it that way? They can watch and I wanted to ask about this as well. Like if you're frustrated with yourself, because that happens as an artist, you're trying to get something right, and you're not getting it right. You get to model the behavior. As a teacher, I get to model the behavior of whatever I'm talking about. When I'm talking about mental health, I can do examples and little role plays of things. As an artist, you get to model the behavior of an artist for the viewer live in person, and they can ask those questions. Has that
Right.
been something you've noticed in like people's learning from you?
I think so. I mean, I don't know. I get feedback a lot from, not a lot, but like occasionally I'll get feedback that people say that like the way that I've presented something has helped them understand something about art or about their process or about their struggle. I feel like, especially like what you said about like the struggle in the process, I think is one of the harder parts about streaming art, because like when you're streaming a game or you're streaming something else, like the game is the content, right?
Yeah.
Like with art, it's a benefit in some ways that the content is just the drawing and it can kind of carry itself. But it's also like the intimidation factor too, because it's like if you're not happy with the piece that you're making, it can be very, very intimidating to stream that process. And that's actually part of what we talk about a lot during the art gym, is just that fear factor of like making a bad drawing in front of an audience, or a drawing that you don't think is up to par. And it kind of leads to a lot of conversations that honestly, to go back to your point about learning while you teach, kind of reinforces for me a lot of the things that I do want to model in posture, which is like perseverance through struggle and like being okay with not making the perfect drawing in front of people, and not just like feeling like in my head that that means my career is over because that's going to be the moment that the art director had popped into my stream and they've decided that I'm trash, because those are kind of the it sounds extreme, but that at least for me, that has really been how it has felt for a long time with like how you present your work online as an artist. It can feel so intimidating because you see all these perfectly curated Instagram feeds, right, with like beautiful, gorgeous pieces and sketches, and you're like, well, my work doesn't look like that. Like, shoot, I guess I'm not ready. And just like getting over that feeling of never being ready, I think is yeah, the joys
Yeah.
of perfectionism
Make
indeed.
it
Yeah, it's a
make it
problem.
first, make it perfect later.
That's
Yeah,
what yeah, that's what they say.
my
Finished not perfect is my version of that, yeah.
our most recent lesson, in fact, on my end was on self-talk, on the
Mm,
psychology of self-talk and how it brings us down psychologically. We talked a little bit about the studies about it, and one of the things we talked about is what I listed as is Capcom, the 6 different types of self-talk that come up, and one of them is the comparison. The first C is comparison.
yeah,
Comparison being the thief of joy. Like what people are putting out there, as E to the 2I pi puts it, it's curated. They're not putting out their worst stuff. They're not putting
right,
out their struggles. They're putting out their best stuff. When you see someone on social media, that's the best possible life that they're trying to present to you. You know,
right.
so that I think is definitely relatable. Uh, One other aspect I wanted to ask about it, because particularly looking at this drawing, I'm getting a lot of Last Unicorn from this.
Oh,
If you are familiar with the Last Unicorn,
I am familiar. I've only seen it like once, but I am familiar.
one of
Yeah.
the most beautiful old animated, and I love the old
Mhm.
animated. It's not a Disney film, but it's
Yeah.
in that vein, just absolutely
Very pretty.
gorgeous. But seeing that,
Yeah.
do you get a lot of, because I have, maybe it's because my model has animal ears, a lot of the furry fandom
Oh, for sure, yeah, I've always been kind of, adjacent to the furry fandom. I've
adjacent.
been making art
Yes,
online for I've been making art online for since I was, like I said, 14. I've always been interested in animals, in fact, I'm told pretty regularly that I should go, to, like, a fur con or something. I never have because 'cause I've always felt like a bit of a poser. Everyone always tells me not to worry about that, but I don't necessarily draw anthropomorphic animals, but I think you can anthropomorphize animals in a lot of ways that aren't, like, traditionally, like, seen as quote unquote "furry anthropomorphic," right? Like, the word anthropomorphic or to anthropomorphize is just to apply ascribe human characteristics to. You can
yeah,
anthropomorphize a car. People do this all the time. They give their cars names and they act like they have feelings, like, that's just the same
they
as,
made whole
any
movies
other.
about it.
They did, yeah, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang would be a great one. But yeah, like, I mean, I definitely enjoy I do enjoy storytelling with animals a lot. One, I just like to draw animals. I've always been fascinated with them. Um but, yeah, I would say that, like, probably most of my, career, I've been kind of, like, adjacent to that fandom, though never not a part of it, I wouldn't consider myself that, but, totally welcome to have anybody who enjoys animals, in my community, I'm not mad about it, I have personally found, uh, that community to be extremely, supportive and enthusiastic, and, they love the arts, so, like, I'm totally ha
Yeah,
I feel very fortunate in that way,
they have
um,
propped up a
but
lot of great artists, I think,
yeah, for
because
sure, for
they
sure.
vote with their dollars and they will support the arts and commission.
It's
Uh,
incredible, honestly.
yeah,
It's such a subculture kind of defined by visual mediums too. And so it just kind of lends itself. But yeah, I mean, I draw a lot of animals, but I do find anthropomorphizing animals in any kind of a way that feels kind of human, just to be kind of interesting. I have a comic that I've wanted to work on off and on for years. It's called Drift. It's exclamation point Drift if anybody wants to pull up the link in my chat. But um, basically, it's a very human story, but using like African animals. I've spent a lot of time drawing African animals. They're some of my favorite animals, and I like the idea of using animals to tell stories that are very human. Just because it kind of forces you to confront each character without some of your human bias in a way. I don't know if you're familiar with the book or the graphic novel, Pride of Baghdad. It was kind of one of my big inspirations, for doing a comic like that. Um, but I also grew up watching, tons of Disney movies and such that do the same thing. But it forces you, you look at a character and the things that they say and they believe, and because they don't look human, you can't judge them based on their clothing choices or their gender or, their ethnicity or, any of these things that we bring to the table when we read a comic book featuring humans. And I like that idea. I like that you have to kind of confront what you're seeing without some of that human filter bias. And so I do kind of gravitate towards storytelling, I would say, including a lot of animals for that reason. And just for my community, we are going to have an ad that I can't snooze, unfortunately, but go hop over to the Knowledge Fellowship stream during ads if you want to make sure you keep up with the convo. So,
I've definitely gotten a couple of commissions that feature my ferrets because in the model they sit on my shoulders. So, and the people who have done the best work for me in that regard have been anthropomorphic artists. So, uh,
mhm.
I I appreciate their work because they have done some fantastic little pieces of my precious little evil noodles. Um, since we've brought up this before, and I didn't want to broach it in case it was something people don't want to talk about, but I think we're probably going to end up on the same sort of broad line of this in AI. And
Mm.
what has it changed in the emotional landscape for illustrators? I know that there's a lot of the economic side. What has it changed on the emotional side for illustrators? What's the sentiment?
Oh man. So this is such a pervasive conversation for the last like 4 years, I would say, in almost every art circle I've been in, and I'm sure all the artists in the in the chat who are listening who would relate to this. Like it's been a bit of a roller coaster. I think it's when it started out, it felt much more dismal, and I think for some people they do still feel dismal. I mean, you hear stories about people like professors not knowing what to tell their art students, or art students being like, "Why would I even go into this field because it's about to be taken over by robots?" And all these kinds of conversations. But I think lately it's kind of had this really interesting. So I'm trying to find the silver lining with some of this stuff because it is really devastating in a lot of ways, and it is demeaning. Frankly, my take on this whole thing is, and this isn't quite what you asked, but I am going to build around to the point.
Please,
Um,
please, yes.
I think I think it has pointed out the problem that artists have always 2 problems that artists have always seen. How little regard people have for artists and the value of art, and how little they understand what art is and why it's important. And in some weird ways, I actually think lately it's helped people understand why art is important and what makes it art in a way that I don't think we could have done as a global collective in a heart almost any other way. Because what you're seeing is people in the general public who know nothing about art are not preferring the slop, you know? The whole idea was that, "Oh, we can just, like, make this really high productivity and just, like, churn out all these really beautiful pieces," and at the minute people find out or realize or notice that it's not human created, they're not interested. It's not art if it's not made by a human at point blank, and that goes for writing, that goes for music, not
Yep.
just visual arts, right? But the whole reason it's interesting I've seen a really great and I'm sure you've seen it too, a great analogy of, like, they invented a chess machine, like, in the '70s or '80s,
Hmm.
and it was, like, make could play perfect games, it could beat every human, like, all these famous chess players played it, and you know what we don't do? We don't watch that robot play chess.
No.
We watch people because it's the problem solving, it's the watching, it's the admiration for the problem solving and what the capabilities of the human mind can do. That's what makes a lot of things
Yep.
valuable in life, you know? And I think it has shown us like what we've seen as artists is actually at conventions and at art shows, what's actually flying off the shelves is original artwork, right? It's people's paintings. It's not just the prints. Like actually print sales, my understanding is print sales are down and everybody wants originals. Everybody wants something that is like touched by a human hand to have been made. It's really taken you've seen a huge pushback in the art side of things to go back to traditional media. I know so many artists who've switched back to traditional. I'm hoping to get into traditional mostly because I wanna use up all my traditional supplies. I've got next to me, I've got, like, decades of art supplies that I've never used. But also just because it seems like, if I could sell a couple originals to make rent at a show, I'd love to do that, and it gives me a chance to practice. So, I mean, emotionally, it's been a roller coaster because it definitely was so I would say, like, 2022 until about the end of 2024, early 25, everybody like, it was pretty grim, and I think most of 2025 is still was pretty grim, and of course, I'm not gonna get into all the geopolitical things happening, but there were a lot of reasons artists were dismayed, to be sure, but I feel like lately I've seen the last, I would say, 6 to 10 months, I've seen, like, a big shift in the way that the general public is feeling about this stuff, and I think to me that's been the biggest indicator, um, is, like, people don't want it. The general public doesn't want it, the minute
Yeah.
they find out that there's been generative AI, they don't want it. They don't want it in their phones, they're tired of it being forced on them on the computer, like,
Yeah.
nobody wants this because it's not helpful and it's not actually it's, like, creating more distance between us and what's valuable,
That
and so
distance
that
is
has given me
so
hope.
big, and I think
Yeah.
uh, alienation is the word I want to come back to. But
Mm.
what you just said at the end there about people not wanting it, we saw such an instant backlash against several games that came out
Yeah.
recently that had been found to have been using generative AI, and just the
Yeah.
backlash was tremendous. And the people refunding the games, and people having to be backtrack, and CEOs saying, "Okay, well, won't do that anymore." That has been heartening. I would have to agree. And you talked about the chess robot, and people don't
Yeah.
watch chess robots. What they definitely don't do is watch chess robots play each other. You might
'Cause who wants
find it interesting to watch a human player see how far they can get against this perfect chess robot. You're not going to watch a chess robot play against a chess robot.
Right.
In the same way that and AI artists think, AI quote unquote artists think,
Oh, yeah,
well, I
no.
went through all these processes and I did this art faster than someone else did. Well, I could drive my car through a marathon.
Right.
Nobody cares. Like, even if I went really slow and ran the marathon,
No.
it
Yeah.
would actually be
I
me doing it.
yeah, no, I refuse to call AI images art, and I refuse to call the prompters artists. I call them AI prompters because they're not the art is a process. Someone in chat said this earlier, I think it was Christmas Cat. You learn that art is not a product, and that's what people who are using AI, generative AI images, that's what they're trying to get as a product. They don't have they're missing that journey, that decision making we were talking about. That's why it's not art, is because you didn't go through a journey of decision making where you suddenly discovered something you never thought of in the process of making the piece or writing the novel, right? Um, it's at best, the most I can say for an AI prompter is that you are a bad art director. That's what you are. You are somebody who's directing something else to do all the decision making, and you're trying to get it to make what's in your head. Not only are you you're a bad art director, but you are a nightmare client. Like, these are the type of clients that you get as an artist that you hate working with, because they're trying to get you to make what's in their head. And that's just not possible, and it's also not art at that point. Like, my job is not to be an extension of your body as your hand. I'm not a printer. But people who don't understand how it works, they think that's how it works. And that's who that product was designed for. Like, people who would have commissioned artists who were expecting that, those are the people using AI. Those and the people who don't have money and they just wanna make something, they don't care who it impacts, or they think, "Oh, it's not that big of a deal, I'm just one person." Here's the problem though, if 7 billion of us all say, "Oh, it's not a big deal, I'm just one person," we are all a part of that problem.
Mhm.
So, I don't know, I'm not gonna tell anybody what to do, but, like, ethically, there's a lot of considerations outside of just the plagiarism, the fact that it's not really art. There's so many problems with it, but yeah,
I think that
it's,
is also a reason why I think I've seen people more interested in watching art streams is that people are
mhm,
interested in provenance. You'll see a lot more artists in the VTubing world post the speed paints, post their process, post them doing the work to prove that, hey, I'm a real human artist doing this for real. And you get to see the process, which is so cool of like watching someone do the, not just the artwork for, say, a VTuber model, but then all of the rigging and the 3D work that goes into it. It's
yeah,
an incredible amount of work. And then people will think, well, that, why are you charging $3,000 for that? Because it's $3,000 worth of work for someone to do this over the course of months. And then
right,
as the consumer, that was done for you. Like that was work that was done. That was a labor of love and your labor of whatever you did to make that money and pay for it. Um, I have seen people seem more interested in provenance and seeing the process be done, which is another, to your point of potential silver linings, is that people want to not just know that it was done by human hands, they're more interested in seeing it done by human hands and
mhm,
watching art
yeah.
streamers.
Understanding it, yeah. It's informative, and I mean, as an artist too, like, if you're somebody who wants to learn to draw, it is so helpful to watch somebody else's process. I mean, most artists, before the art streaming was really a big thing, like, would just watch YouTube videos of, like, people's speed paints or, like, how you were actually doing the painting. And I think to go back to something you said earlier, I think part of the benefit of streaming specifically over other types of video content is because of that interaction. I think of Twitch, frankly, I say this all the time, so my community has heard this a million times, but I think of Twitch as an interactive podcast platform, quite frankly. I think of it as something a lot of people are putting on in the background and listening to, maybe occasionally watching. But then when you have a question about something somebody says or something somebody did, or you need more clarification, especially in like a more educational stream, you can pop in and kind of interrupt and be like, hey, can you go back to that thing? I didn't quite understand what you meant there. And it becomes that more like teaching opportunity. And I
Yep.
think it is that interactiveness that truly separates the platform, and you almost as an artist, you almost get like a I don't wanna say free mentorship because it's not really the same thing as a mentorship, but if you're an emerging artist or somebody who wants to learn to draw, getting involved in some art streams here on Twitch, great way to do that because 'cause you're gonna get exposed to so many different ways of thinking and different art styles, and, like, you can really start stretching yourself, to
Yep.
learn and to grow.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. And that interaction, as you said, was great for the streamer as well. In my teaching too, people will ask questions that I wouldn't have thought of when I was making the lesson.
Sure.
We were talking about self-talk and someone in the chat, a new viewer said, "My self-talk has gotten really bad since my father's passing." I would not have thought to even think about. I would not have thought at all about working in how does grief play into that? How does it change someone's self-talk in the moment or in the coming weeks or the months after some,
Mhm.
traumatic event? And so we just talked about it for a little while. It was a part of the lesson that I'm sure helped people that I didn't even think about putting into the lesson because I didn't think about how grief might change someone's self-talk, their automatic negative thoughts that happen. Uh,
Yeah,
so yeah, as the teacher, you learn too. And the
I do.
what word did I want to go back to? Alienation. The what you were talking about, the human hands, the human touch.
Yeah.
The epidemic that we have right now is an epidemic of isolation and alienation and uh, atomization of society. And
Mhm.
so, mass produced stuff, I think someone mentioned fast fashion earlier, even. All of these
Oh,
things
yeah.
keep us separated, keep us in this sort of mass produced cookie cutter realm. People want things that are touched by human hands because it reminds you that other people are real, that there are other people, that you are one of them, and that you can make connections. You have to make real human connections to commission a piece of art. You have to talk to someone a little bit, at least. And you have a piece of art that was made by human hands. I have my little interviewer mug with my little
Nice.
piece by since I want to make sure I get their name right, Arena Lacoris, that did this little commission for me of my
Nice.
me with my
Oh, I love
ferrets
it.
ferrets on my shoulder. Uh, I had to meet that person at least for a little while and talk to them and tell them what I wanted. And now I have a piece of art that was made by a human being. And, the provenance of it, knowing that it was made by a human, knowing that you helped bring something into the world, even as the commissioner, you didn't
Yeah.
make it, but it was something that you wanted and you brought to life by whatever work you did, whatever labor you did, which is just as valuable as anyone else's. And arts, artists' labor is as valuable as anyone else's as well. You combined to make that happen. You brought a piece of art into the world that wouldn't have existed otherwise. So you get to play a part in the creative process, in creative expression by commissioning art. So if you are out there and you are interested in commissioning art, please go do so. Look somebody up, find an artist who is a style you're interested in, and get something done. Uh, but yeah, alienation, that was the word I wanted to use because art is, whether it's drawing, reading, writing, sculpting, that is an antidote to alienation.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, it reminds you why life is valuable in some ways. It's like the fact that we can create and bring things into the world from nothingness, essentially. Um, or at least at the very least, like, iterate or reiterate on themes that we've experienced and kind of filter them through our own experiences. Like really art, music, writing, it's all about communication. It's all about like what is the purpose of art if no one ever sees it? Like sure
Mm.
you might enjoy it for a while if it was just for you, but if you were the only person on the planet, I think deep down somewhere, if you did continue to make art, part of you would hope somebody would see it one day, because that is the whole point. Is what are you communicating to a viewer, even if that viewer is just yourself. But obviously in our world, most of the time the viewer is going to be more than just you. Um, and to go back to if I may, I don't know how much I want to be respectful of your time
Please,
too.
by
I
all
didn't know.
means, great conversation.
Okay.
Happy to continue.
Yeah, no, I'm enjoying it. I wanted to go back to your point of self-talk. It sounds like that's something that you really, kind of talk about a lot, and we talk about that quite a bit in maybe a different kind of way with art, but it basically boils down to self-talk. There's this idea, and it kinda goes back to comparison, right? Where especially if you're like a young artist or if you're somebody like me, and I saw somebody in chat saying that they kind of are coming to art later in life, and they're like feeling, like they want to try this. I was somebody who didn't go to art school. I went to school to be a teacher, didn't really take art classes. I'm kind of self taught, and then spent years teaching and not drawing at all because, like I said, teaching is a lifestyle. It's not a job, so I didn't have any time. Um, but I felt behind, like, when I decided to do this illustration gig, I was like, "How am I gonna catch up?" Like, I had this feeling of, like, I've lost all this time, like, I don't have the skill set that I'd like to have, and, how am I gonna do that? And so, I don't know if I changed the view so that your chat could maybe see my screen too. I apologize that earlier I didn't
Well,
have
that's all
that
right. Yeah, I've
on,
got
but
it. They can see us now.
okay, cool. I'm gonna just draw, like, a little diagram that I draw sometimes when we talk about the art journey because it has a lot to do with self-talk, like, when you're first oops, hold on, not a pro, hold on. There we go. When you're first starting, like, on an art journey, like, here's you, right? And then here's, like, the journey, and then you see these artists, like, way out here that you just think are, like, super incredible, they've, like, made it, and they're making all this beautiful work, and you just think, "Boy, I can't wait to, like, be up here. Like, I can't wait to be at that point," right? And, like, that's the goal, that's the driving force. And then but sometimes the problem with that way of thinking about it is you start to feel behind, right? You're like, "Oh, shoot, like, if I had started earlier in life, I could be here instead of way back here or even here, on this path." But the thing about art is the longer that you're on this path, like, when you finally get here, what you realize is, "Oh my gosh,
Mm.
like like it keeps going, right? Like it's a never ending path. And I think at some point you have to switch your thinking to because the way I've always felt about it and the way I did feel about it, and it kind of held me back for a long time, is like this idea of being behind or like never being good enough or never gonna have the right skill set. It starts to feel like a big rock, that you're just carrying with you all the time, right? It's just weighing you down and you're just unable to like there's a level of like depression that starts to happen
Yeah.
as you're working. It's like you're still skill building, you're still striving, you're beating yourself up over it. All that negative self-talk comes in, but it's like you hear it so often with young artists or emerging artists, and I did it myself for sure. It's like you're not good enough yet. You got to be better. like all these just like super negative ways of motivating yourself, and this rock just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it's like this huge boulder and you just feel so terrible. And I think the trick has been to, like, turn that rock, like, drop that rock, right? And turn it into, like, a flame, like a fire underneath you, like a motivating factor of, like, man, there's, like, a big difference in saying, "I wish I was here, and I can't wait to learn what they know." You know, there's a like, it seems subtle, but there's a way to acknowledge that you're not where you're wanting to be without being self-deprecating, right? And that was, like, a huge shift for me when I first went from teaching to illustration. It was taking that big heavy burden of, literally just, like, spiraling in self-doubt for, like,
Yep.
months sometimes of just, like, I'm never gonna like, what am I doing? Why did I leave teaching career? Like, I was stable, I don't know what I'm doing, like, I'm never gonna be good enough, and then turning that into, like, excitement, about, like, "Man, I can't wait to, like ooh, look at that cool lighting effect. How did they do that? I can't wait to learn how to do that myself." Or, like, "How could I use this in my own way?" Or, "I can't wait to learn how to draw a rocket ship," you know? Instead of saying I'm bad at it or I'm not as good as these other people, like, making that a motivating factor has been just, like, a huge and I tell people this all the time when we do our art gym stuff. And for anyone who missed that earlier, art gym is basically this. We just do studies together. We talk about anatomy, we talk about, skill building and like the process of making art and trying to turn that into like a hey, we're struggling together. Everybody's going to make bad drawings and we're just doing it together and we're not trying to compare. We're just trying to encourage ourselves to like keep on that path. Because we're trying to recognize that the path there's not an end point,
Nope.
There's always this person here is so like is excited presumably to learn even more,
Yep.
you know?
If I
So,
see those
anyway,
two people and I say, that second person is 5 years down
yeah,
the line from that first person, and the person at the start is thinking, well, I could be there by now. I could have already been
right,
there. I think, well,
right.
it'll take you 5 years to get there. Well, if you don't start,
Yeah,
those 5 years are
exactly.
still going to pass. The 5 years are still going to
Yeah,
pass. So you might as well start. Or one that really hits me because I've been trying to get putting out feelers for a PhD. I would like to go back and get my PhD in educational curriculum design or something like that. And one thing that struck me as pretty motivating was the line, if you knew in a you would get your acceptance after 100 rejections,
yeah.
how excited would you be for each rejection? If you knew that
Oh,
after
yeah.
100 rejections you would get to where you wanted to go, how excited would you be for each rejection to pass? Because that's the process. You're going to have to fail a little bit. You're going to have to practice. You're going to have to get those rejections. I mean, and artists, I'm sure, know that as well because
Mhm.
you make art all the time, and writers too, putting out manuscripts and getting rejections. Actors doing auditions, getting rejections. That's the process, right?
Oh, for
The
sure.
time is going to pass. The the years are going to pass anyways. There's no sense worrying about the ones behind you.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this a lot too, like, like, with art especially, depending on what field you're getting into, like, I tried to get into children's books for a while, which is part of why I try to keep it kinda family friendly and work safe on my stream, because I know that there are sometimes kids that watch, but like, pitching to agents, I'm sure this is something you're familiar with. Like, with illustrators, and maybe it's similar with artists, you start to try to make a game out of it. Like, my goal is 50 rejections because that means at least 100 people I reached out to, right? Because you don't even get responses from everybody. You
Right.
just are hoping that you get any response, and you, like, get feedback over time with that. But I always say that I keep my expectations low, but I keep my hopes high. Because it's I'm not you can't do anything without hope, right? Of course, when you apply to the show or you apply to the agent or you apply to whatever, you're hoping to get in. But if you don't expect to get in, then it's always a pleasant surprise if you do get a positive feedback. Because, like myself, I've been trying to get back into I used to do conventions here in Colorado before COVID, and I've been trying to get back into my local show, Denver Fan Expo. I've been applying year after year after year ever since COVID. I let my table go in 2020 and 2021 because of COVID, and I've just never been able to get back in, and I get rejection every single year. I get told no. And you just, like, I hope to get in, but I'm not gonna be, like, heartbroken if I say no because it's like, that happens. There's other artists, not everybody can go. I lost my spot, and I just have to wait. Um, I've learned not to take it as a personal failing. Sometimes a rejection just means it doesn't mean you're bad also. A good thing to remember too in any creative field is it just means you're not a right fit, and there's nothing wrong with being the wrong fit. It's like what we were talking about earlier. You wouldn't just hire any artist for your cover because what if all they do is like creepy to Tim Burton gothic dolls, and that's not the vibe you're going for. Like, saying no to that person is not you saying your art is bad, it's just not the fit for the project, you know? And hope is a tricky and subtle thing, it's true. But I try to keep my hopes higher, but my expectations low, because I think that's the safest way to kinda protect yourself without being negative, because so often you can take rejections as, like, a personal thing, like, "Oh, you're not good enough," and that's frankly, at some point, you have to acknowledge that all that's doing is holding you back, and if you refuse to acknowledge that that kind of negative self-talk is holding you back, then you're never gonna see the progress you wanna see, and you have to be willing to accept that, like, if you insist on being negative, you have to also recognize that you are insisting on never progressing in your goals, because they are so intricately tied, in my opinion.
And I would say self-deprecation is kind of epidemic now. There's this it's like a joke. People it it does feel like the default now is to self-deprecate and to be down on yourself, and it's just sort of a funny haha, oh, well, my life
Yeah,
sucks or
yeah,
whatever. And one of the things I talked about was you should try to catch that in your friends and sort of call them on that. You'll see in, people's Discord chats or friend groups, people will make those comments like that and it just goes unchallenged. Be the person to challenge that in your friends group out there. If people are being too self-deprecating and constantly down on themselves, say something about it. You know,
yeah,
don't let people continually be too down on themselves. If you have the relationship close enough where you can be honest with your friends, be honest with your friends and try to catch
yeah,
yourself with that too. Uh, there is an epidemic of self cynicism and pessimism and being too down on ourselves, self deprecation, rather than real earnestness and sincerity. We're unfortunately years past the new sincerity in the 90s. Um, that really needs to make a comeback. People, being really sincere and earnest about things. But that goes to the cringe lesson. People are afraid to be cringe, to be seen, to be perceived, to be,
yeah,
embarrassed. Um,
for sure.
and that is also really limiting people, especially I would say in the art world of people being afraid of putting their art out there and
Yeah.
being embarrassed because, it's not good enough. It's not as good as so and so.
Yeah. I think it's even compounded in the art world. This is another thing I've talked about a lot on my stream is, like, I saw somebody in chat mention perfectionism, like, you have to remember, like, art is a at its heart, it is a critical field. It is extremely hard not to be I mean, you always hear every artist is their own worst critic, which is true, but that's almost by design because and again, that goes back to, like, learning to turn that boulder into a flame. That's been such a huge turning point for me, is not letting that become something that I define myself by when I don't feel like I've succeeded, but instead be like, "You know what? I'm gonna get there." But it's hard too with, like, the self-deprecating humor. I can think of, like, a number of my friends, and I do this sometimes too. I try not to do it in, like, a har I feel like there's different tones you can strike with self-deprecating humor, though. Like, when you say something that's a joke and people can tell you don't really mean it, you're just kind of, like, playing into something, I think that's one thing. But when somebody definitely is, like, it doesn't feel like a joke anymore, like, it feels like they're just kind of saying a truth they believe about themselves, it's so hard to know when to step in sometimes too, because I have also known people that have used self-deprecation as a way to get attention, and so I don't wanna feed into that either because I don't think that's helpful for them or for a community. So it's really tough to know, I think and this just comes down to knowing people and knowing yourself. Like, if you recognize that you are doing these things, it's important to self-analyze and to challenge your own assumptions about yourself and about why you're doing what you're doing and why you might feel justified in that. And if you aren't willing to challenge those things, it can frankly, for any creative work, it can create a block. Like, people who are feeling art blocked, it very well could be the way you're talking about yourself. If you feel like you haven't improved in years, like, it's worth analyzing, and instead of just brushing it off. But then I also have friends who are self-deprecating in a way that is, like, almost like clinical depression level of, like, they need somebody who's a little more tuned in and, like, well studied in how to combat this than I am. So, like, I don't always feel, like, able to like, you just have to know how to measure the situation. Um, and I think it comes down to a lot of, like, self-awareness on the part of the person saying it too. But I would agree. I think self-deprecation, it's especially because of, like, we're all aware how critical the internet is and how, the comparison game, how destructive that is, and it's easier to just make fun of yourself than it is um, to just, like, put yourself out there and be earnest, right? I don't know. I'm certainly guilty of that. Like I've definitely been self-deprecating, but I try, and I hope people mostly hear it as me just being silly. Because I feel like I've been pretty upfront, I think, with my journey with the people in my community too. And like I definitely used to be really bad about self-talk when I was a kid and when I was a young adult, especially. And I kind of had this reckoning with it, probably around the time I was teaching, and really had to come to terms with like, hey, these ways that you've been thinking of yourself aren't helpful and they're holding you back in the things that you actually want to do with your life. You know, you get one life and you're kind of messing it up by being so down on yourself all the time. And like, thankfully, I was pretty self aware about it in college. I just didn't take the steps needed probably to change it. But I don't know. I think, yeah, I think there's a lot of nuance to what's happening behind that
It's
too. But
it's
yeah.
very hard because of, I mean, the fact we live in an internet age and social media, and that's
Mhm.
just the way things are. And you get these comparisons, and everyone else's life is so perfect and pristine and curated, and yours is not. And you only see the internal and not the reality that everyone else is going through. Uh,
Yeah.
and there's just a pervasive sense of, unfortunately, hopelessness too in the current generation. That's very hard. One of the things that was most difficult to see in students is, even at very young ages, the
Yeah.
sense of pessimism and hopelessness in a lot of the student body. Like, these are young kids who already seem to not feel like there's a lot of value in their future. Uh,
Yeah.
but it's one of the things we need art for. Art is what gives people hope and expression. And you talked about, you make art so that other people can see it. And I didn't say it at the time, but it keeps coming into my head now, is a cave painting. Someone made that 50,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago for people to see. They put their hand on the cave wall and drew
Yeah.
around it for other people to see. And we still see it however many years. I'm not an anthropologist. I don't know how long ago cavemen were,
A
but
while ago. Yeah.
it was a very long time ago. And we still see it. And that expression, whatever they were trying to express with the little paintings of them hunting a bear,
Yeah.
is still with us today.
Yeah.
People wanted to express those feelings.
Yeah, that I think it's part of what it is to be human is just to communicate. We're social creatures. We can't escape it. And to go back to what you said earlier, I think we are kind of seeing like the kind of the fallout and the reckoning of that. I think between the isolation of COVID and everything becoming bots, and people are just really confronted right now with how bad that is for us. you know? Um and how we aren't really designed to work that way. Like we need each other, well, like it or not, even the most introverted of us. Like we need we need we need each other to actually be able to survive and be functioning as humans. I mean, sure, you can go live by yourself in the woods and never see another person, but name one person who did that with their life that came out of it sane. Like people who do that for like their entire lives and never see another person. It's just not good for us, typically. And the ability to connect is what makes what gives life meaning. What, like I said before, whether it's music or writing or art, that's what it is. And I really do think again that's like the one silver lining I can see to like this era that we're in with like this all this automation and generating the generic basically and regurgitating that over and over in like every form between like coding and entertainment and just all of it. I think there was already, like, a slight movement, at least I don't know if you were familiar with this, but, like, as an elementary school teacher, I was already starting to see a lot of, like, millennial parents, especially who kind of were the first generation to, be exposed to the internet, kind of, like, pulling back on some of that exposure with their kids and going back to flip phones and, like, not giving their kids iPads. I think that has been I feel like I've been hearing so much more about that lately, like, especially, and I think it's a reaction to all this stuff we've seen as a society with, like, where technology seems to be going. And I think a lot of people I like to think I like to be an optimist as much as I can. It's very easy to be a pessimist, and I try really hard to look for the silver linings and things, and I think that's one that really does give me some hope. And some of the benefit I think too, to continue on this kind of, I guess, rabbit trail, but I feel like I've been seeing a lot of, like, younger generation TikTokers and YouTube and content creators, like, kind of rediscovering classic experiences that are human that they didn't get to experience because of this disconnect that we're talking about with technology. Like, I follow some people who are, like, between the ages of, like, 18 and 22, and they're, like, discovering classic literature, and they're just, like, reading, like, Count of Monte Cristo and Jane Jane Eyre and like all these things that I had to read when I was in school. Apparently, you don't have to read those anymore. But like they're just like totally enamored with this whole world that they've never experienced before, and they're like learning to enjoy reading when a lot of kids that came up in school the last 10 years, at least in the US, haven't enjoyed reading, haven't learned how to read. Um, and so I think there are some positives too. Um, but the pain and the struggle to get to the positive has been pretty detrimental. So we'll see what the fallout is
Yeah.
ultimately. But I
I'm
do like what I'm seeing as far as the trends of people recognizing the value of the human experience, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think hopefully we will see that reflected in media, in the arts,
Yeah.
in a new sincerity
So,
in books, in TV shows that are earnest and sincere rather than, I mean, look at most of the big popular shows. It's a lot of very cynical, very sardonic, a
sure.
lot of, you know, sarcastic
Yeah.
humor. There's not a lot of like earnest and authentic stuff. It's a lot of backlash, which is understandable because of all of the things that people are trying to express and kind of counter. Uh, but
Sure,
hopefully, as
sure.
we progress into more open optimism, people will want to reflect that with their art and have more sincere art reflected back at them.
Yeah, hopefully, hopefully. Like I said, I try to be an optimist, and I do think this is where the arts, like music, writing, art, I think this is where we can have a lot of power. I mean, it's part of why, I especially with like all the conservation stuff, like with the vaquita, and I'm wanting to do more stuff like that this year. But I really do, and this sounds so cheesy and so 90s Disney movie, and I don't even care. Like, I really do believe that if we all do a little, it adds up to a lot. Like, if everybody just tries to affect what they can in their immediate circle or in their sphere, even if that little is just like volunteering someplace, or being nice to people intentionally, not just like casually going through your day, but like when you encounter people making an effort to be kind, like all those little tiny things, they add up. Like if everybody did a little bit of intentionality and a little bit of extra effort to like make the world better. I mean, it sounds so cheesy, but I really do think it's true. Like there's a domino effect to that.
Yep.
And I don't know. I like to put that out in the world, and I think art and any of the arts have a role to play there because
Yeah.
you can communicate that with your art, with your writing, with your music, with your social media platform, which is again part of why I just think like the education side of Twitch has been so inspiring for me because I do think it makes the world better to encourage people to learn and to be curious. There is no scenario in which I think it is a negative at all for society for people to be a little more curious, to ask a few more questions, and that's really at the end of the day, that's what art is. It's creative problem solving. You're asking questions, you're observing, you're learning to draw something, and you're asking questions about how is that horse put together? Like, what is the anatomy doing? How can I understand more about this so I can learn to draw it? And you just take that curious mindset and you apply it, everywhere. I think that's a net positive. And so
Absolutely.
as much as I'm able to, I want to use what little platform I have to kind of like put that into the world. And I think I like to think that maybe other people will do so as well if they see folks like us like doing that stuff because I think it's all good, and I hope that as a society we can start to recognize the good in spite of the bad. But it is hard. I don't blame people for pessimism and cynicism. I like to call it tactical optimism because you have to look for it. Like it's intentional. It's not something that just falls into your lap.
Yeah, and I think the domino effect is real. The ripples are real, and I've talked about this with the class, and Rob Wayforge put it very interestingly. Oh, we have a raid from David Peterson into your channel.
Oh, hey, David. How's it going? David's a fantastic artist if you guys aren't already following David. David was the creator of the Mouse Guard, is the creator of the Mouse Guard comic book series, if you guys are familiar. David, welcome in. We're having a conversation with Mr. Aegis from the Knowledge Fellowship, talking about art education outreach and using streaming for that. To welcome the Raiders, my name is Casey. I do art, but right now we're having a really engaging conversation about all these things. So welcome in.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Great to have you with us this evening. I think Rob Wayforge was just talking about how on the road is where he practices a lot of kindness, and that's exactly the kind of ripple that I'm talking about. Is that, and I think that suits what you were talking about as well. Is that those small acts add up. The example I gave in my class is you don't know what someone who cuts you off is going through. Yes, it sucks. Yes, they cut you off. You don't need to tailgate them and cut them back off again. Yeah, maybe they've got a lot going on. Maybe they're on the way to an interview. Maybe you flipping them off, getting mad, screaming at them, cutting them off again. They're off their game. They have a bad interview. They don't get the job. their life spirals. You don't know. You don't know what kind of small ripple effects you can have, as opposed to just showing that little bit of kindness, or someone is rude to you in the grocery store. Uh,
Yeah.
Maybe you being kind to someone as you pass them in the classroom makes them feel better about themselves. You give them a small compliment, they feel good. Maybe they ask that person out that they're interested in, and it goes well, and they have a great date, and then that person ends up their soulmate. You can't worry about that a lot, but it
Yeah.
should motivate you to try to put a positive ripple out there rather than a negative one.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For anyone just coming into the conversation, we were talking about how art and learning and all these things, they inspire curiosity, and we both seem to agree that a little bit more curiosity does make the world a better place. It inspires kindness. It inspires observation. I saw someone in the chat. I don't know if everyone has seen Ted Lasso. I'm a huge fan of Ted Lasso. Love that show so much. If you haven't seen it, it's worth the Apple TV subscription or even just the free trial. Frankly, just binge it. It's great. You won't be able to stop watching it. But there's a phrase, and I was so mad when I heard this because I've been saying a version of this for years. But Loden said that what they say is, "Be curious, not judgmental." I was like, "Dang it, that's so much more concise." Because for years, what I've been saying is, "Ask more questions than you make statements." Because I find that I tend to enjoy time with people who ask more questions then they just come at you with a statement. And I would strive to be that kind of person because I think, again, I think it's a net positive. The more curious we can be, I just don't see how there's a negative involved in that. It doesn't mean you have to give up your beliefs, but being curious about somebody else lowers guards, it lowers walls, it lowers boundaries. And just showing that little bit of kindness of like curiosity about somebody, you're like, why do you think that? How did you arrive at that conclusion? Just it's just you can still figure out where they're coming from without being aggressive. And I don't know, I like that, but yeah, Loden, the way that they say it in Ted Lasso is so much better.
Yeah, be more curious, not judgmental. I like that. The more questions you ask, the more you learn. Statements sort of
Yeah,
terminate thought, right? They terminate the conversation. That's you're declaring
yeah,
your
exactly.
position rather than asking more questions.
Yeah, you're immediately putting someone on guard by making a statement, right? It's like the soapbox of Twitter, and like social media in general, has made it really hard for people, like you said, kind of to be genuine. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
anyway,
And
I don't know, I think curiosity is inspired by learning and inspired by art and creation and creative problem solving, and I think that everybody should hang out on the art and education sides of Twitch because it inspires those things.
yeah,
It makes you curious.
on media in general, because nobody changes their mind on Twitter. It doesn't matter how
No.
right you are, the other person is never going to change their mind. They're never going to
Yeah,
admit
for
they were
sure.
wrong. They're
Don't read
never
the
going to
comment
change their
section.
position. Don't read the comments.
Yeah.
Don't read the YouTube comments. Yeah, ask more questions. Be a little less judgmental. Uh,
Yeah.
well, one other question that I wanted to ask is we've talked about AI, and we talked about how professors themselves don't seem to know what to talk about or teach. What do you think our teachers, our professors should be talking to their students about with regard to technology? What should we be preparing new students for?
And so having never gone to art school, I don't know if I'm the one super qualified to answer this. I have only an outsider's view and what I've heard from other friends who've gone to school or taught at the college level. It probably just sounds silly, but honestly, just what we just said, just stay curious. Like, I really think that's all it comes down to because at the end of the day, people who want to create art, they're going to create art. Like, I tried to like get around it for a long time, but at the end of the day, you just if you have this desire to put something into the world, whether it's a story or an image or some kind of communication like music, like we've been talking about, there's nothing that's really gonna stop you from doing that. Like all the people I know who were artists as kids, they went and had second careers. It doesn't mean art has to be your career, but they still create. Like they still do art. They still make things. And I think that is something that, again, to go back to what we were already talking about, I think it just puts value back into the world, right? Like it is valuable, just the nature of creating and communicating like that. And I don't know, like if I had a student who was like, are you talking like an art student? Like if I was teaching in an art college,
Yeah.
I don't know, hot take, not so sure that I don't want to say that art school is not valuable because I think there are value points, but I think you can make a career in art with or without art school, um, depending on the field you're trying to get into. I guess I would say, are you here just for that piece of paper, or are you here to learn, is probably the thing I would ask a student. because that's going to determine how much they get out of that school, right? Like if they're just there because they think they need a piece of paper so they can go get a job at Disney, one, that's not how that works. Two, you're not going to get anything out of this. So if you just want to like go do this for fun, go do it for fun. Don't waste your time in art school, is what I would tell
And
them.
money.
But yeah,
And
and
lots and
money. Oh
lots
my
and
gosh,
lots of
so
money.
much. That's why I didn't go to art school. I think I mentioned earlier I was too broke for art school. I couldn't. It's too much. It's like almost as much to get a like a degree as a doctor or something. Um, but I would say to them, stay curious and try as much as you can, maybe to not measure yourself against others. And it sounds so trite. It's kind of, I guess, I would just say a mishmash of what we've been talking about probably because I don't know what the future holds. I don't think anyone who's telling you they know where things are going to go. I would certainly not teach them to use AI tools. I have heard a lot of schools are doing that. I don't think I could teach at a school because I think a lot of teachers are being forced to integrate generative AI tools into the processes. I certainly wouldn't encourage it because it's doing the work for you, and you're missing out on that process to get to a product. And I think that's ultimately going to hurt you in the long run. So maybe I would say don't take shortcuts and actually like apply yourself. It's very classic education advice, but I think it's just as the reason it's trite is because it's true. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say go back to comparison as well. I think it's one of the reasons people look for shortcuts is they want to get as
sure,
good as other people faster.
yeah,
But that taking that shortcut doesn't actually get you there. It gets your shortcut there.
yeah,
Your AI got there, not you. You did not
yeah. So you
get
didn't
there.
actually learn anything. Yeah, so, as somebody on Blue Sky, I don't know if you're on Blue Sky much. Somebody on Blue Sky posted recently about had a question. It was like, why do people want to learn to draw if they don't enjoy the process of drawing? And I thought about it for a minute, but I think it goes back to what we've already talked about of just like people don't want to struggle. It's uncomfortable to make a bad drawing. It really is. And that's part of why I think people don't pick up a drawing habit or decide to continue drawing once they're a kid. They're like they decide that somebody else is better than them and they move on from it because they're like, I can't do that. But it's the people who confront that struggle, who draw bad quote unquote art. I put it in quotes because it's very subjective, bad and good, right? But it's people who make a quote unquote bad drawing over and over and over trying to get to something that they find good. And that is the reward. And for a while, when you're first drawing, you're frustrated. It's kind of like we were talking about, like it's that stone you carry of comparison. It's that struggle of like, "Oh, I'm never gonna be good enough." And it's not until you've been drawing for a very, very long time that you realize that the struggle is the art.
Yep.
Like, that struggle, that is how you found your style. That struggle, that is how you figured out how to problem solve. That struggle is how you figured out how to communicate visually. And if you skip that part, you're not gonna end up making art. You're gonna end up making generic stuff
Yep.
that's already been done before. You're gonna end up being generative AI, which is basically why
Yeah.
it's not art,
You're
because it
just a
can't.
cog in that machine. Then you really
Yeah,
are
it
replaceable. You're just a prompter.
yes, exactly, and if you wanna shortcut that, then you are replaceable, exactly, because all
Yep.
generative AI can do is iterate. It cannot innovate, Like, it cannot take an
Yep.
experience that it's never had and inject that into a concept.
That's
That
why it
is what
can't
art
write.
does.
That's why
Exactly.
you
It's why
can
it can't do
easily
anything
tell an AI
creative.
generated paragraph. I see people putting out AI generated books, and I'm like, at
Yeah.
first it discouraged me during the novel process, but I'm like, these are awful. These are awful. There's no emotional
There's no
resonance.
heart. Yeah,
There's no
there's
heart.
nothing.
There's no real
Yep,
character growth. Um,
yep,
Hate B I wanted to address talked about the opposite, an opposing force of curiosity being people being mentally exhausted. Yeah, people are
sure,
exhausted. Life is
sure.
exhausting right now. It's hard, and that's why anytime that you can be someone who injects a little energy in life and curiosity and uh, it was Windrose Arts said, "Thank you for reminding me of the time I worked up the courage to compliment someone's hat as I passed them, and the response was, 'Thank you, I really needed that today.'" We all need
Aw,
that. We
I
really
love
do.
that.
How many of us
Yeah.
would feel great if we got a compliment tomorrow at the grocery store about our shirt, about our hat, about, whatever, as long as it was something kind and, appropriate? Yeah, I mean, that would keep me going for a week. I would feel great about that. Uh, yeah, it's,
Yeah,
and yeah, there are people talking about, yes, the technology in terms of non-iterative, like analyzing photographs for cancer screening and whatever. Okay, that's a different
yeah,
animal than,
right.
iterating, people's art and stealing other people's style. I've seen AI generated images where you can see the person's signature
Yep.
kind of blurred out enough to where I'm like, I recognize that person's signature. I know exactly who this is stealing from.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's pretty bad. It's automated plagiarism is what generative AI is, and aside from the art side, the intellectual property side, I just feel like it's a data privacy issue that I think more people are starting to worry about, but I wish they could have worried about it a few years ago. Because, you know, just saying that you have access to everything on the internet because it's on the internet is like, I mean, that's never been how American copyright law has worked. That's how it's worked in some other countries that don't care
Hmm.
as much about freedom of speech and freedom and, like, personal property, but, like, that's never been the way that it has worked in most Western countries, and it's just infuriating to me that more people aren't seeing that as a problem. I think they are now, but yeah, just yeah, that whole thing. And I do wanna say, like, every time I have the AI or anyone really has the AI conversation, you always hear somebody go, "But not all AI." And I just wanna say, like, for the most part, I think that the quote unquote AI, first of all, is a useless term because they've applied it
It's
to
not AI.
literally everything that's machine learning. Like, even your spell check now is considered an AI feature. So it's a
Yeah.
buzzword. Like, AI doesn't mean anything. It certainly doesn't mean artificially intelligent. But it most of the problematic AI is not the stuff being used for math and sciences. It's the generative AI. It's the large language models that are not built by individuals, but are built by huge data sets, right? Like the Lion data set and so many others that are being used for like stable diffusion and ChatGPT. So just for, like, clarity's sake, like,
Yes.
I'm obviously a fan of science. I'm a fan of and I think that science and math are where generative AI and large language models are useful. That's really what they're designed they're basically advanced autocorrect. Like, most of us, I think, know this, but just for the record, for anyone who's just popping into this conversation, and maybe this is your first time hearing conversation about generative AI, like, the useful AI obviously is good. Curing cancer, that's good. You know, like, searching the human genome for for all kinds of things, amazing use of I hate to even say AI, like, large language models.
Yeah.
But, like, what most of society, artists especially included, as well as musicians and writers, what most of us have a problem with, and what is causing the most issues with all these AI data centers it's not the math and sciences, more often than not, and I learned this from Twitch science streamers actually here, people like Science Streams and Paleontologizing and Raycodactylus, like, most of those research databases are hand assembled by the researchers who are doing the research. These aren't huge data sets, they're not just going to ChatGPT to do research, okay? Like, and those hand-built data sets are small, and they're not causing the same amount of energy draw that is being drawn if you just, like, put a prompt into ChatGPT. It's literally ChatGPT is like filtering all of human everything to give you that response, and the amount of energy you're using is so much worse than just doing a simple Google search. And I
Which
don't wanna go on that
unfortunately
too much.
includes a bunch of AI now too that you have to
Oh my gosh,
use
yeah.
mods or
Yeah,
whatever to get rid of.
yeah,
But yeah,
Google
it's
is
not actually
syncing itself,
AI.
yeah.
This is not Haley Joel Osment or whoever it
Right.
was in that movie a long time ago. I think it was Haley Joel Osment in the movie AI where he was the AI kid.
Yeah. Oh,
But they're
that's
not
right, I
really
forgot.
artificially intelligent people.
Right,
Um,
yeah. As
it's
much as they want us to believe that they are or could be,
yeah.
it if anything, it's self-cannibalizing and getting dumber. The way that the technology works
Oh
is
yeah,
not capable of,
because
like,
now it's
intelligence the way we think of it.
they're feeding its results
Yeah.
into itself. It really is
It's
kind
eating
of
its own waste
cannibalistic.
basically is what's happening. So
Yeah,
they've already seen this hallucinations and the fall of all this, but anyway, like, yeah, to be fair also, I also wanna be very clear to anybody out there who's listening, if you maybe are not as on board with this, you have to keep in mind that you are talking to somebody who literally has this emote in their repertoire, so I'm not
yeah,
exactly an unbiased party, so keep that in mind too, but, for the most part, what I'm talking about is, and what most artists are talking about is the generative AI.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it was in Oblivion, Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, their enemy system was called the Radiant AI. Like it wasn't AI, and it wasn't AI back in 1999 or whenever the game came out. We're not talking about actual artificial intelligence. We're talking about large language models.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
they're it's just a catch all buzz phrase now, which unfortunately
Yeah,
helps
yeah, it doesn't
muddy
mean
the
anything.
waters.
Yeah. It's a corporate buzzword to use to get investors to be excited about a tech that they don't understand. That's really what it is.
Right.
If you've
It's
ever been in a
LinkedIn.
corporate meeting of any kind, whether it's at a school board or at a large company, you know exactly you've seen this. Like, It's just getting somebody with a lot of money to invest in something.
Browse LinkedIn for even like 5 minutes, and you will see.
Yeah.
I mean, all of their profiles are now generated by AI anyway, so
Ugh, disgusting. Yeah, DuckDuckGo has an annoying image search. Yeah, I've actually switched to DuckDuckGo and Ecosia. Ecosia does have some things I'm not super big fan of, but the positive of Ecosia is it's a lot like Google search. You get a lot of the same types of results. You can turn off the AI. I'm fairly certain. I haven't messed with it too much, but the benefit of Ecosia is all the ad revenue. A large portion of that goes to planting trees and environmental causes.
fantastic.
So if you are missing, like DuckDuckGo is basically Bing, which doesn't always have the best results. But you can, like Melimony said, turn off AI. You can just hit a toggle. It's so easy. So those are the 2 that I've been using are DuckDuckGo and Ecosia,
I mean, Google
as
image
opposed to
search was
Google's.
already becoming close to useless anyway, and then you
Oh,
can't
yeah,
even.
so
It would never
useless.
take you to the actual image, and then it would be like a Pinterest thing that you would have to log into. And I'm like, I just want to
Yes.
see the image that you showed me. Like, it's not that hard.
Yeah, yeah, Pinterest has also got its own issues too, but they Pinterest has made it to where you can turn off the AI, and I did see somebody, I think it was Pate, mention, yes, you can type minus AI in a Google search, and it should take out a lot of the results, but it doesn't always.
Mm.
And it's still I've had some issues with that working, like, they've taken it away to where it didn't work for a while, I think it's working again now. I just don't trust Google, and I think I'm probably not alone here.
Probably
Oh my
not.
gosh,
Wow,
welcome in.
fantastic.
Hey, Sophies, welcome in, it's so good to see you. We are here with Mr. Aegis from the Knowledge Fellowship. If you guys wanna hang out, we're talking about art, education, conservation. I'd love if you wanna drop any links in chat, Sophies, feel free. Thank you so much for raiding in. Here, I'm gonna drop my links really fast. I know we had another raid too
Take
from
that
David Peterson. But if you guys wanna
alpaca
hang out,
stuff.
we're
Yeah.
talking about art and creativity and, like, how to stay optimistic in the face of kind of what's going on, and I don't know, we're having a good conversation about the importance of art and creative thinking, and, we'd love to hear from you guys if you wanna hang out, but, yeah, thanks for hanging out and lurking with us, and welcome in, Raiders. It's great to
Yeah.
have you.
Welcome in.
Sophie's, thank you so much for
Great to
joining.
meet you.
Guys, yeah, Sophie's is actually, I was lurking the other day, does, like, productivity and co-working streams. I'm not sure what, you're working on today. Let me get you a shout out here, and I actually don't know if we got a shout out for David Peterson. I'll have to fix that in a second. But yeah, go check out what oh, you're doing some art. I'd love to see your art. If you need to raid and run, no worries.
Yeah. Make
Anyway,
sure you're getting some good sleep and hydration.
yeah,
My class will know all about my sleep lessons that I give. Probably have to give twice a year nowadays because of how bad people's sleep is these days.
it's
Um,
so hard. Yeah.
it's rough, but I mean, it's the internet age and blue screens, and it's hard to get people to put their phone down for 15 minutes before bed, which is the number one tip that I can give people.
Yeah.
Put the phone away, put the phone away, put the phone away
Yes.
for 15 minutes before bed. Don't look at any blue screens, put your phone away, read quietly, look at some art quietly, and then lay down. That will help you sleep. But that's hard to teach kids, especially. Put the
It
devices
is.
away for
It's
15
hard for
minutes.
adults. I mean, it's a
Yeah,
drug. It's a drug. It's an addiction. Adults don't even know how to regulate it. How can we expect kids to? Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
I actually just started doing that. I've been trying to do it for a while, but I'm trying really hard to fix my sleep schedule. You're the kid in question, Sophie's. I've been so bad. The doom scrolling on Instagram lately has been so bad. But yeah, turning off all screens like a half an hour before bed has really helped, and trying to get back to like an actual bedtime. I'm trying to work back up to like getting up at 5 to go work out before I start my day. That's been my like goal. But I know I can't do that if I'm staying up till like 2 a.m. scrolling on Instagram. So I gotta fix it because I think that's another thing too is just like in a time where everything is it's easy to feel down, like, taking care of your physical health. It sounds
Yep,
so stereotypical, but it is true, and I it's been cool, actually. I feel like I've seen, like, this swing away from, like, "Ooh, the sun, boo, hiss," to, like, "No, actually, maybe touch grass, though." Like, all kidding
literally.
aside, maybe that's actually good for us, because I think it is. I mean, and I get that people don't always wanna be outside, but there is something to getting sun and
Yeah,
seeing
on
nature and just reconnecting.
on the 31st, I will be a part of a charity stream for mental health awareness with Rita Kamashiro. We'll be talking about physical health specifically. She reached
Nice.
out to me to participate in that since I have a master's in kinesiology. My background was initially in physical health and wellness and some exercise psychology. So I'll be talking specifically about the psychological benefits of physical activity and my favorite saying, which is touch grass and see sky, because it is not just Getting outside is actually seeing open sunlight, open sky. Actually, touching grass does have these legitimate, well researched physiological benefits, psychological benefits. Any kind of movement is incredibly important. And we'll talk about that on the 31st. Hopefully, we'll be able to raise a little bit of money. Um, yeah, the doctors are right. We should go touch grass. Any kind of you do your ads, 180-second ads every 3 minutes or hour. I think I do the same because for every hour of sedentary behavior, um, if you break that up, you can decrease your all cause mortality by about 5%.
There you go.
If you're getting up every hour, moving around a little bit, I always tell people get up, move around, grab some water, get a drink, use the restroom, wash your hands, and wash your hands because 1 in 3 people don't wash their hands after they use the restroom. And
Oh
don't
my
be that
gosh, I
person.
hate that. Don't be that
Don't
person.
be
Actually,
that person.
it's it's funny you bring that up. I see some people in chat saying stretch with Casey. So I do that during my ads. Part of why I put them all together is so that we can have a stretch break.
Yep.
Actually, I have a little shrimp, and I tell people to de-shrimp. So everybody, if you can hear me, get ready to de-shrimp. You're going to arch the back, push the shoulder blades together. We do that every single hour because it's bad for our bodies to just sit all the time. And on that note of getting out in nature, for all the artists in chat, I did want to bounce off of that too. Um, it's inspiring. Like, if you are just in the same environment day in and day out, if you're always indoors, if you're not changing your atmosphere, where do you think that inspiration is gonna come from? You know, you have to put new
Yep.
we talk about it a lot as, like, the creative bank account, right? You gotta fill up that bank account with new experiences and new places and new faces and new things so that you can pull that information, those experiences, and put it into your art, you know? If you're not doing that, you're missing out on inspiration. You know, find a park, ride a bike. You notice what happens when you see people out and about. It's all super, super helpful.
I sent you a picture of a piece I commissioned, an anti-shrimping piece by an
Perfect.
artist named Athra.
Amazing. Oh, and sorry, we do have a new puzzle in the chat. We also do
Oh,
co-working puzzles
yeah,
on
yeah.
afternoon streams. So if anybody likes this conversation, you wanna listen and support, there is a puzzle you'd be welcome to play. And I do wanna say for anyone on my side, again, we're about to have an ad. They usually happen around the start of the hour. So if you wanna keep up with the convo, just pop over to the Knowledge Fellowship stream so you can hear what we're saying. But yes, seriously, avocado, please, people wash your hands. I'm kind of a not a I wouldn't say germaphobe, but I'm like
Yeah.
I'm
I mean,
if I don't wanna eat other people's waste product if I don't have to, so, like, please wash your
yes,
hands. Don't touch anything,
we
like,
could reduce
without washing your hands.
all communicable disease by about 30%. Uh,
That
The
is
World Health
crazy that it's
Organization
that
says if
high.
everyone washed their hands properly.
I remember finding out actually as an adult so this is well, I don't know if I wanna get into too much detail here. Somebody that I was relatively close to, I found out did not wash their hands after they went to the bathroom, like, as a habit because of their gender, we'll just leave it that way.
Mm,
There's this idea that you don't need to, and I was like, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I think you should probably wash your hands, though."
yeah.
That was horrifying to me as a female. I was just like, "What?" Anyway, please wash your hands. At least put hand sanitizer on, do something.
By all means, please.
Ugh, yeah. Anyhow, on that note, we're about to have a stretch break on my channel, so make sure you go
Yeah.
over to, Oh my gosh, your female coworker? Oh, no. Can't be friends. How? Don't even oh my gosh, don't even after teaching, especially elementary school
Oh,
kids,
wow. Grimy little
I have
kids.
so much. Oh my gosh, I will not touch a public drinking fountain. I'm so sorry if anybody out there uses water fountains. Listen, I've seen kids do stuff to those fountains. I you don't I wouldn't do it.
Nope. I wouldn't
I wouldn't
either.
do it. Unless it's a water bottle filler where it's like a drop down, stream. I'll even that though, I'll let it run for a second before I put my water bottle in there just in case, because I don't trust people to not be, like, touching that with
Yeah.
their dirty
Yeah.
fingers to, like, be gross. Yeah, I'm not a fan. Yeah. Anyway, teaching kids will ruin you for that. What age group did you teach, did you say?
I taught first through fifth.
Okay, so you
Unfortunately, I
know.
also
Yeah.
had to do some K, but it was PE. So it was like
Okay.
60 kids at a time sometimes.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
just an
Impossible.
outlandish amount of kids to have
Yep.
to deal with.
Yeah, we did, so we didn't like calling it specials. For those who don't know,
Mm,
in elementary school, a lot of times they call it specials. I hated that term.
yeah.
We called it AMP, art, music, PE. And so we kind of had like we had like amp days sometimes where it's like, you had to get a certain number of hours in the art, music, and PE, and so they would like put the whole grade level together in the gym. Chaos.
Yep.
And we would take them outside and like do these like fitness Friday things, and it was a pretty good like I feel like compromise there. But yeah, classroom sizes and how many kids they put into PE classrooms, especially, I just feel like is crazy.
It's
I mean,
rough.
a whole grade level is going to be like it was like 120 kids in a gymnasium. Like, what are you supposed to do with them? Like,
It's
it's
challenging.
it just becomes classroom management at that point of like trying
It
not to
is.
get kids to kill each other. It's like, you're not actually teaching. You're just, and I think that's the worst part about teaching, not just at like the elementary level, but just in general. You just get treated like a babysitter, and I think that's some of the most like demoralizing aspects of
Hmm.
public school in the US is at every grade level. Parents, a lot of parents, not all parents, but a lot of parents. Enough parents that when you ask a teacher why they stopped teaching, a lot of times they'll say the parents. Okay?
Yeah.
It's because you get treated so poorly. It's not the pay. Some teachers would teach without very much pay. I mean, many people who teach, they do it because they love it and they think it's valuable. But if you don't have that support from home, it just makes it impossible. It's completely, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And then those are the same parents who say, well, I don't want the school teaching my kid such and such topic. I'll be the one to teach them. And then they don't
But
teach them that.
then they don't wanna, you see, we both said the same, then they don't wanna parent, but they get mad at you for parenting. Yeah, they don't wanna parent, they put it on you, and then they get mad at you for doing it. It's an impossible situation. And for me, I see your image now, I do like that. The
That's
crack
me in my
getting
little
impossible.
Hollow Knight outfit after I
I
stopped
love that.
shrimping.
There you go, yep, you gotta de-shrimp. Yeah, it's tough. I always tell people when we do the de-shrimping stretch to, pretend like you're trying to touch your shoulder blades together and push your neck back with it, kinda like it's on a board or something. But, yeah, I'm pretty bad about shrimping too. But no, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to get started on the teaching rant, but
Oh,
it's
happy
just such
to
an
talk
easy
about that.
such an easy thing to do. Um, yeah, how long have you been streaming? Just for my community, maybe who isn't familiar with, what you do?
I've been streaming for 2.5 years, at least streaming anything educational. I started off VTubing right off the bat because I thought it would be very useful for, like I was talking about earlier, sort of the separation, that extra layer of sort of parasociality that can help people sort of open up. So yeah, I stream health and wellness topics. We talk about some physical health stuff. I talk about hygiene, sleep hygiene. We've talked about cannabis and drug use. We've talked about nicotine and vaping. I'll talk about my summer health lesson coming up soon, staying healthy and safe in the summer. We'll talk about mental health stuff, sleep. I've talked about guided meditation, how that can be helpful. We do breathing exercises, self talk. We talked about cringe. Um, we've talked about mental health awareness. I think the most important lesson I've given is mental health first aid, which is giving lay people the basics of how to help someone who may be experiencing, say, things like a panic attack or suicidal thoughts. Um, so we do
Yeah.
talk about some pretty serious topics at times, and that has certainly been a challenge with Twitch to stay within like the algorithm,
Yeah,
at least, of what they will allow to be promoted, uh, which is unfortunate because
yeah,
they will allow a lot of things on this platform, and yet you might get in trouble for talking about things that are really important. Whether it's, uh, they don't want you to talk about drugs, but if you talk about drug abuse prevention, you're kind of get caught by the same filter. So that's
that's
been
true,
a
that's true,
challenge for
yeah,
me.
that would be tough, and, that I think it is an important topic, especially the resurgence of drug use in the younger generation has been, like, interesting to me. Like, growing up with all the, like, I'm actually right now, I think yes, I'm actually wearing my old Dare shirt that I still have,
Fantastic.
like, just the messaging of, like, no smoking and all this, and then to see the resurgence of, like, vaping is really interesting.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I definitely
and
like
I'm sure
giving
you
that
talk about that a
lesson.
lot, yeah.
For those of you
Yeah,
who are interested in potentially seeing that lesson, I think we'll do the mental health first aid lesson coming up again soon in the future. I think that's very important. We talked about dealing with distress lately and how to be okay when the world's not okay, because
yeah,
there are so many challenges going on in the world, and it's constant bad news, constant stream of things that are pushed by the algorithm. Social media
yeah,
does hook us up to bad news constantly because it keeps our eyeballs, keeps us hooked in. We live in an attention economy.
for sure.
So those are things that I talk about on my channel. So if people are interested in that, MR underscore Aegis. I spelled it special because I'm special. It's AEJIS, not AEGIS, like the shield. But yeah, that's what I generally do. And I do use a VTuber avatar. So if that's not your cup of tea, that's fine. That's okay. You see what I look like now. You know, some people
I
think
am
that's a
curious
taboo.
I am curious about that, about you mentioned that you chose the VTuber personality to create a barrier. I've actually always felt like, and I'm curious what your experience has been like. Like, do you feel like that's helpful with people opening up? Because or do you do that to kind of prevent some of the parasociality that can happen when you use a webcam? Because I often find that like people sometimes feel more connected when they can see a face because they feel like they're having a conversation with a person. I'm curious your thoughts on that if you feel like sharing.
Absolutely. And I think there are ways they can be done either direction. I think because of this type of topics that I talk about, people have been, especially younger viewers, have been willing to talk about that with something they see as a sort of friendly uh, cartoon face, something that like they would see on a Saturday morning
Mhm.
cartoon. It's been
Okay.
very curious and interesting to me to see how many people are willing to talk about things that they might feel too tough to talk about otherwise with a an authority figure like an adult, like a teacher in a classroom. It's given the sort of virtual classroom uh, a sort of ethereal sense that I can talk about this stuff here because it's not going to come back and like my friends aren't going to see me, even though it's like a stream and you don't have to worry about that. It's you and your sort of anonymous avatar that you're using. That's the vibe that I've gotten and sort of feedback that I've gotten from students is that it feels like a separate place, but it does feel like a real place I can go. It makes it feel like a virtual classroom, a place that I step into that is separate and apart from the real world, but that I can bring my real world problems into. And having it be sort of completely without a human face in it, seeing this sort of
Yeah.
friendly, smiling VTuber face has made it easier for them to talk about stuff like that uh, and talk about things like grief that they might not be willing to talk about otherwise.
Man, I feel like that also kind of speaks to like maybe like a so it sounds like it's mostly like the younger generation maybe that feels more comfortable that way, which kind of just continues to speak I think to that sense of like isolation from other humans in a way, like being
Yeah.
more comfortable with a non-human, like the idea of a non-human in a way.
Yes.
That's really fascinating to me.
I think for
Um,
the older viewers who get that same way, I think a lot of them tend to be neurodivergent. I think
sure,
that's been
sure,
a big
yeah.
help as well for um, it's very unthreatening to see that cartoon face rather than the human face. And I
I
think
guess
it's
I can see
easier
that, yeah.
for people to sort of relate to that. And that's been very interesting. But I mean, even like the really basic stuff, I did a lesson on winter safety and I talked about checking your vents. Just a basic thing, check your vents for fire safety. And then someone sent me a picture in the Discord later on that they checked their back of their dryer. It had scorch marks on it because it had been
Oh
getting so
gosh.
hot in there that it had
Yeah.
been getting close to starting a fire. And like, I would never have checked that if I had not popped into the stream and, you know, decided, well, he said I should check my vents. I'll check my vents. Their dryer could have set on fire, so
Yeah.
it's just been so worth it, even with the struggle to gain attention in a difficult sort of, and it's a very saturated, very competitive field. Obviously, VTubing is a big deal right now.
Is it I actually don't I have some friends who we have some VTubers in the chat even too, and I know there's quite a few artists that do because a lot of artists, they do wanna maintain that autonomy,
Yeah.
right? And I can totally understand that. There's like I said before, like, if I hadn't already started, streaming with a webcam, there's a good chance I would probably be, like, doing some kind of like a maybe not a VTuber, but like a PNG tuber, some kind of a drawing that I could move around, just to retain some of that distance, but it's interesting to hear, and it totally makes sense what you're saying. Like the whole like I said before, the whole reason I even started off using a webcam because I didn't have one at first. And again, I think this is part of the benefit of art streams is that you don't have to.
Yep.
If anyone's listening to me right now and you are interested in streaming art, don't feel like you have to have a webcam or a VTuber or even a microphone.
Nope.
There's plenty of art streams that are very successful that just literally share the screen and they type in chat.
And you
And
don't
it's
have to have
totally
any
fine.
professional
You don't have
certifications.
yeah.
You don't need to be a certified teacher. You can be just a knowledgeable person who's willing to share what they know.
Yeah, people just like hanging out on art streams and like seeing the art get made, and that's totally fine. But like part of the reason I even started doing a webcam is because at first I wasn't. I just had a mic and I was just drawing. so I didn't have to worry about people looking at me. And then I had a friend, my friend Ryu, who actually got me into streaming in the first place. She at the time was using a webcam, and I had just moved from Texas to Colorado. I was 800 miles from all my friends and family, and she's somebody I've known since I was in first grade. And just, like, feel like, being able to see her face and, like, feel like I was talking with her felt so comforting and, like, so, like, "Oh, I'm hanging out with my friend Ryu."
Yep.
It felt, like, less isolating to be so far from her. And she had kind of at the time been like, "Hey, you might consider doing a webcam because it can help people feel connected in a way or feel like they kinda get to know you as an artist." And so I took that into consideration and I did, but, there's definitely times where I'm like, I kinda wish I wasn't on camera. Like, some days you just don't really feel like you're either not looking your best or maybe you're feeling
Mhm.
kinda under the weather and you just I don't know, there's sometimes I'm just like, I'm not feeling the camera today," but I do it because it's just kind of, like, part of what I think. I think people like to see my reactions to stuff.
Yep.
In some ways, I kind of think that all of Twitch is like, it's basically like a mixture of, like, reaction content, right? You're, like,
Oh
watching
yeah.
somebody react to what you're doing and, like, that interactive podcast thing I mentioned, and holy cow, we are just,
Wow.
like,
Another
getting the
fantastic
rates
raid.
today. You guys, thank you so much. Lilypad is a fantastic artist. Lily, welcome in. How was your stream? If you have any links you wanna share, feel free. If you need to raid and fade, they'll let me keep you. Guys, please do go follow all these. We've had so many awesome raiders today, amazing artists, and, Lily is definitely one of them. We are here with Mr. Aegis from the Knowledge Fellowship, talking about art and using this platform, Twitch, for, like, outreach and education and just kind of just like how to navigate that as a streamer, and somebody who's interested in these topics. So if you guys want to hang around and ask questions or just be a part of the convo, I do have a little co-working puzzle at the top of chat. Feel free to hang out and listen. Uh, sorry, I think my delayed reactions just happened. But thank you for the follows. And Lily, if you have anything you want to share, please drop a link if you'd
Yeah.
like. But welcome in, Raiders.
It is great
And
to see so many art streamers, and I would love to see more art streamers in the Knowledge Fellowship. So, as a reminder to
yeah,
myself, I should say, if you stream anything
please.
educational, be it art or anything else you're interested in, you should check out the Knowledge Fellowship. Be a part of this educational streamer group. We would love to have you. I'd love to have you as a part of our group. We help to promote and share other people's educational content. So, always happy to have more individuals involved in there. And I do still think I need to get that set up. E to the 2 I pi, that little hot hotkey. But either way, uh, since we were talking a little bit about psychology and our sort of young viewers that we have, there was one thing that it reminded me to ask about. Since you've done art and focused with younger viewers, and there's Vakita.
Sorry, I saw someone say it. So here's my Vakita to SRK Wales. I was trying not to interrupt you. I apologize.
No, that's fine.
I can talk
Uh,
more about the Vakita in a minute if you want to stick around, Wales, if you have time. But please
on
continue.
Poipus. Yeah.
On Poipus, even, yeah.
Yeah. Are there things that younger viewers of art see first or that they notice that older viewers of art don't? Or what is the big draw? What really catches a young art viewer's eye?
So I feel like this actually kind of applies also to the new artist, not just a young artist, but like also somebody who is new to learning art, which is part of why I love doing like an educational aspect to my streams for anyone who's kind of just popping in or maybe hasn't seen this yet. I do this thing called the art gym. It's a pretty big part of what I do. Pay no attention to this doodle. I'll explain it later. But the art gym is like a study session for artists, and I find that people who are just starting that art journey, whether they're 5 or 55, but anyone who's kind of early on that path. We talked about the path of art learning earlier, but it's that learning how to see, and you get excited with those early skill building stages, like when you're a kid and you're young and you're just learning how to use like materials. Like I was an elementary school art teacher, and like kids, they just got excited to touch clay. They don't get to do that at home, or to mess with paint that they don't get to use at home, or to kind of make a mess and just get their hands dirty. And I think adults feel that way too, but sometimes we don't feel as free to explore those things, right? But the thing that both groups have in common is that excitement at learning. And I think it's addictive because, like, it's kind of what made me keep drawing, quite frankly. And I kind of wonder how many people who are artists in the chat feel the same. But like when you're first learning to draw, and you're like going from those really basic types of drawings that you don't think are good, and you finally figure something out. Like I will never forget the minute I learned how to draw a griffin. for whatever reason, this was, like, a big deal for me. Like, I hadn't made this connection that basically, like, I had been drawing all these, like, kind of dog creatures and, like, fluffy dragons and stuff, and then, like, they had kind of this basic head shape, and then one day it occurred to me on accident because I was drawing, and I accidentally kinda made it look hooked, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I just drew a griffin." And it was just like, for this is like the most simple shape, right? Like, it's not that big of a difference, but just that excitement of, like, learning something new and being like, "Okay, now I wanna learn how to draw all the birds so that I can, like, try different types of bird heads on the griffin, like, what if it had a parrot beak or a hawk beak or whatever?" And I think there's something kind of like it's like when you're walking along this path and, like, all of a sudden you find yourself here on the art journey, right? And you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not where I was. Like, this is exciting." It's that addiction to skill building, and I think you start to see it when you're an early stage artist, whether, like I said, whether you're 5 or you're starting much later in life. If you apply yourself and you experiment and you allow yourself to get excited and observe, you start to, like, it's kind of like this, I feel like, you kind of grow really fast, and then you kind of plateau, and then all the plateaus after that are a little more gradual, I think. Sometimes you'll get lucky and you'll get a big one. Sometimes you'll go down, and you'll but, like, generally you go this way. But those first few, like, exploratory years of art making, I feel like this is that you kind of end up chasing that high a little bit, I think, of just, like, skill building and learning and trying to hit that next best piece, that next, like, "Here's the best thing I've ever made," and then, "Oh, shoot, now this is the best thing I've ever made," and you just kinda keep chasing that, throughout your life, so I'm not sure if that quite
Yeah,
answers the question, but that's kinda
I
how
think
I
it
think of it.
really illustrates the importance of scaffolding in education
Sure,
generally, and like
and
giving
scaffolding is
students
not a term I hear other people use.
those those great little
Sorry.
pieces of self mastery that,
Yeah,
oh my
yeah,
god, I learned this new skill, and then lead them to that next new little high, I guess, of now you have another
yeah.
skill, and now let's combine those skills and do something that gives you a new result. Like now you've learned how to draw this beak along with learning how to draw the anatomical wings that we were talking about at the very beginning.
Yeah,
Put those
yeah.
two together and draw, this amazing thing. Uh, yeah, scaffolding and giving people
Sorry. I just
easily
haven't heard
easy pieces of mastery.
yeah, I just haven't heard anyone else use the term scaffolding in a long time. That's a very teachery term for those who aren't familiar. I was like, "Oh my gosh." I think I'm the only one who's used that word in a while. That's funny. That's how I know you're a teacher, especially a younger grade teacher, for sure, you hear it more.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
funny. Do you mind if I talk a little bit about the vaquita just for the
By all
folks who are
means, please
curious
do.
about that? I just don't I wanna be respectful of your time, but, yeah, for anyone who just came in, in fact, I could maybe switch it so you could see a little better, but, this is the vaquita, okay? This is a highly endangered marine mammal. This is basically a life-size version of the vaquita, and, I talked about this earlier in the stream, but last year we did the Save the Vaquita week that I hosted on Twitch, and I'm gonna make it a little bigger on my screen just so people can kind of see. Um, but this is basically like the size of a juvenile. So it's about 3 feet long. There's fewer than 20 of them left in the world, so they're highly endangered. And I was trying to raise some awareness, and I invited a whole bunch of people here on Twitch to participate. Everybody from, like, game streamers to science to we had VTubers, we had artists, we had a food streamer. I mean, we had like a whole gamut of people just kind of reaching out to their communities and spreading awareness about this animal. And we ended up raising over $14,000. And, like, I was on the front page, and I went to TwitchCon talking about this at panels. And I think somebody counted it up, and it was like over 20,000 watch hours on Twitch between all the different streamers. If anybody wants to check out more about that, there's exclamation point Vaquita in the chat. Let's see. Vaquita, that should, oops, hold on, not a pro. Speaking of self-deprecating humor, that's like a running joke on my stream. Anytime I mess up, just not a pro. Don't expect anything of me. Um, but yeah, and one other thing I'll point out too about the vaquita, we are going to do it again this year for sure. Yeah, so I'll do like an all call this summer to see if people want to help me organize that because it was a lot to organize by myself last year. So I'll probably be reaching out. I know there's some people who've asked if they can help. But then I'll be taking like applications and stuff for people to sign up. So if anyone's interested or knows a streamer that'd be interested, it was a really cool event and I'd love to do it again. But anyway, the one other thing I'll say is a lot of people hear me say that there's only 20, fewer than 20, and they think that maybe they're beyond hope. I just want to point out that uh, they are actually resistant to genetic bottlenecking because they are essentially a species that has been isolated for thousands of years, and they've more or less bred out the kill switch, that gene that makes inbreeding so negative for a lot of people, like for, like, a lot of animals, like humans are a great example. We would not do well, as an island species, but, most of the time, species that get isolated to a small area, they tend to kind of develop genetics. They either die from that lack of diversity or they thrive. And thankfully, the vaquita is one that has thrived. So, anyway, let me get it back on the other view for you. But yeah, for anyone who was curious about the vaquita. Oh, sorry. I don't know if you heard that. My upstairs neighbor just like dropped something really heavy. um,
Yeah, fantastic. And I that is another thing I love about Twitch is just the ability for people to come together and work on causes. I mean, I that's
yeah,
just something I hadn't seen before. Of oh, we can just get together and do a charity event for mental health or for conservation. Been a very fantastic platform
for
for that.
sure. Yeah, one of the things I talked about at my TwitchCon panels, which I'll plug this again just in case anyone wanted to see it, from last year. I was on 2 panels. I was on one about conservation on Twitch, and I was on one about education and conservation on Twitch. They were both kind of conservation leaning. I was with a bunch of the science streamers, like, I was on one with Shark Geek and Science and Paleontologizing. But one of the things I talked about is how overlooked this platform is for outreach. Like, it's kind of like you've mentioned before, like you kind of have a captive audience. You have a group of people that kind of probably share your interests at least a little, and they're interested in what you're interested in.
Yep.
And part of what I was telling folks is like, even if you're just like, if you just play games, I was shocked the number of people I met at TwitchCon who are like zoologists on the side, or biologists, or programmers, or like have all these like cool like STEM kind of like fields and skill sets. It's like, talk about that stuff,
Yeah.
with your community, get them excited about it, because I think a lot of people are afraid because they feel like, oh, like what if they're not interested, or they're not here for that, or it's too nerdy. It's like, more than likely, like, especially if you have a decent sized audience, like, people are going to be interested in what you're interested in because they want to get to know more about you as a streamer. It's like you said, it's as much like feeling like you're building like a personal connection with a streamer as it is about the content. And so they're probably already interested.
Yep.
And if you give them a little bit of that, it's going to make them interested. And if we could use that momentum to like save an animal? Like, I really do. This sounds so cheesy, but I really do think Twitch could save the vaquita. Like, the biggest thing keeping this animal from thriving is that nobody knows it exists. Like, so many people have never heard of this animal. I only found out about it in 2024, and I was like, "What?" Like, I'm kind of an animal nerd, and I was like, "How is there a porpoise that's this close to extinction that I've never heard of in my life?" And it's here in the Americas. It's even in my hemisphere, you know?
Yep.
And I was shocked, and so the fact that, like, people know about this animal now, and one thing I always tell folks too, even if you don't have a platform, right, you probably know somebody in your life you could tell about this animal. Just spreading the word. Like, you can't advocate for an animal that you've never heard of. And that's what I feel like Twitch is like, it's such a powerful place for, like, charity, not just charity, but, like, awareness. Like, I think there's so much untapped potential here for, like, curiosity and learning and just, like, outreach. And I would love to see more people incorporate some of that stuff. Maybe it's the teacher in me. Maybe it's the optimist in me that thinks the world can be a better place, if we all do a little bit. But I mean, I always tell people, if you know a kid, tell a kid.
Hmm.
like
Kids love that
like
stuff.
kids love that stuff, and they won't shut up about it. Like, if you get them to fall in love with this animal, it's called the panda of the sea, just tell them it's called the panda of the sea, okay? You have no idea, like, how many animals have been saved because kids got involved. For people who aren't aware, the Spix's macaw actually is back from the brink of extinction because of kids. That movie Rio, kids really liked that movie. They found out that that bird was basically extinct, and they, like, petitioned, and they, like, got excited about saving it, and now that there's, like, breeding pairs in the wild for the first time in, like, decades. It's amazing. Like, kids can play a big role in this, so, like, if you have a kid in your life, tell them about the vaquita. You never know. They might do a school project. They might tell their librarian. They might tell their teacher. Spreading awareness is really such a big part of the equation. So anyway, that's my
Yeah. No,
that's my
spreading
little.
awareness with what you're exactly doing, which is saying that there's hope for this issue. There's a lot of problems in the world, and a lot of people, as we've been talking about, feel hopeless about them. If you tell them about a problem that there's a solution to and that there's something they can do to help, that is
Yeah,
something that they will get involved in because they want to feel like they can do something. People
for sure.
want to feel like they can make a difference.
Yeah, and this is back to the art thing. Like, a lot of people feel like, well, I don't have money. How can I help? You can draw a picture. We
Hmm.
had we had people who were like, who'd made coloring pages that you could print out color. And then, like, addresses, you could mail those to people if you wanted to, or, like, give them to your kids, your kids' classrooms. There's ways to help that don't involve money. Like, again, you can't advocate for something that you've never heard of.
Hmm.
And the fact that this is totally a savable animal, there's fewer than 20, but they can make a comeback. For anyone who missed that, their genetics are resilient to that kind of thing. You can read the paper here if you're curious. Um, but yeah,
And
I don't
wouldn't
know.
it be great if we studied
Yeah.
more about that and learned more about their genetics and how that, I mean, we learn so much from studying all kinds of different animals. And if they go extinct, we lose that
Oh
possibility
my
forever.
gosh. I Yes, on that note exactly, SRK whales, you hit the nail on the head. So part of the story I didn't tell, but I did talk about I have talked about before is the Baiji. For those who don't know, the Bai I'm gonna go on a total,
Go ahead.
rabbit trail here. So, the Baiji is actually the reason I got involved in the vaquita, efforts because the Baiji when I was a kid, for those who don't know, the Baiji is here, I'll pull up a picture of it. It's a now extinct river dolphin. I learned about it from a book I read as a kid called Last Chance to See. It's by Douglas Adams. Highly recommend it if you haven't read it before. He's the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy guy. But this is the Baiji, and it breaks my heart seeing these pictures because this animal's gone. Like this animal does not exist anymore. It was close to extinction when he wrote that book, and I was heartbroken because I read the book as a kid, and I was curious, so I went to go look it up, and I found out that they had just declared it extinct, like extinct in the wild, and there are none in captivity. And so it was functionally extinct, and they had just declared it functionally extinct like a month before I learned about it. And I was shocked. I was devastated. I was just like, "What?" Like this super unique looking, very cute animal. It's only lived in this one river in China, in the Yangtze River. It's also called the Yangtze River dolphin. I just realized that's kind of cut off. Sorry. Um, Totally gone. And at that time, I was pretty naive. Like I kind of thought, extinction was a thing that used to happen. Like I read about it in the history books. Like we almost drove the bison to extinction, but we learned. Or the wolf, we almost drove the wolf to extinction, but we learned. Or the thylacine, like that one's gone, but we've learned. And to like learn as a kid that like I kind of figured like small like bugs and things were probably going extinct that we didn't know about, but a large charismatic mammal like, this is gone now, and that totally blew my mind as a kid, and I was just, like, devastated, that I couldn't do anything to help, like, it was too late, they were gone, there's no more. Lepidus velocifer, I think is how you say its scientific name, vexillifer, it's hard to say, but I'll never forget it because like, was obsessed with this animal for a while. And I think I kinda carried that with me for a while, because I just didn't think extinction was still happening. I grew up on, like, Steve Irwin and the Corwin brothers and Captain Planet and, like, just thought everybody was getting the same messaging, of, like, "This is bad." And, it wasn't until a few years ago that I learned about the vaquita, and my first thought, to go back to what Wales was saying, I was just like, "Holy cow, it's happening again." Like, it's the Baiji all over again, but with the vaquita. And I just felt like, I couldn't do anything, when I was a kid, but, like, maybe I can help with the vaquita. So, anyway, that's kinda like the backstory, I guess, behind why I've decided to kind of incorporate a little bit of conservation into, like, art. And to go back to art here on Twitch, like, or just in general, like, art speaks volumes, right? Like, you can draw a picture and post on social media, and that can go so far. And, like, I feel like, music, writing, there's so many ways, the creative expression, like, you can use that to communicate stuff like this. And you can spread awareness without like, if you can't afford to help financially, like, time is also a valuable asset. Use a little bit of time and create a piece. Put something out there about something you care about, and you just never know. You just never know, who might see it, who might get
Yep.
inspired. So,
You never know who you might see, who you might
yeah,
show something to, and they are able to do something about it. Maybe
yeah,
you're not the
exactly.
person. Maybe it's not you that has a huge impact, but it's because of you that someone else was able to. You just, and
Mhm.
that really goes back to what we were talking about earlier about just the small acts of kindness. Uh, you don't know what that ripple is going to do. The person that you help, that you uplift, is the one who's going to be able to do something really important and helpful. I mean, maybe it
Yeah,
comes back to you. Maybe they do something in the future that is, really impacts your life specifically. We just never know, and that's why those acts of curiosity, those acts of kindness are so important.
yeah, no, I agree for sure. And again, just to go back to the topic too, like, I really think this is some of the power of Twitch is the fact that it is interactive, that you are kind of working with an audience, that they can ask questions and you can clarify and you can spread information and you can make it entertaining and you can make it engaging. Like, it doesn't have to be dry, it can be fun, like, whatever, or maybe your audience does prefer, a certain kind of, like, methodology to it or, like, a more scientific approach. There's plenty of science streamers that just go over scientific papers,
Yeah.
and they, like, take questions, and I think that's great, making that more accessible to the public. But, like, find whatever it is that your community is into, like that niche, whether it's a game, whether it's, you as a person, whether it's your art, whatever it is, and, like, lean into that, and if there's something that you care about, like, I really do think this is just a super untapped platform for that, like, the fact that me as, like, a comparatively small, like, art streamer compared to the broader Twitch, who's who in Twitch, like, I'm pretty new to the scene, I'm not really, like, anybody in the art world, but the fact that, like, so many people that I've gotten to meet over the past couple of years got involved in this, like, it was everybody that made this happen, working together, and it was really impactful to see that happen throughout the week that week last year, where we did Save the Vaquita Week, and, yeah, I'd love to do more of that, so
It does wonders for the people doing it too, because it's something I've talked about in the dealing with distress lesson of how can I be okay when the world is not okay. It's a lot easier to get through those times when you're actively engaged in doing something helpful. It's a lot easier
yeah.
when you personally feel like you're making a difference, when you're helping in whatever way you can. That you don't have to have money. You can just be raising awareness. You can be putting up flyers. You can be contributing to a newsletter. You can be volunteering your time. Uh, yeah, as Paid B says, you can be okay yourself. That's
Yeah.
People have overused the term radical act, but it can be a radical act to be okay in a world that's not okay.
Yeah, joy is powerful, optimism stands out, like, deciding that you can, like, believing that you can make a change, I think. Like, I've certainly been inspired by a lot of things I've seen, from people here on Twitch using this platform for things like that, and it kinda gave me the desire to give it a try and see if I could maybe make an impact. And, the first year that I did the Vaquita event, it was much smaller, it was just me, but we still raised, like, $500 and a few people learned about the Vaquita, and that was pretty cool, and then the next year I was like, "Hey, does anyone else wanna do this?" And it just kinda blew up. And it was really cool to see that happen. But I don't think that would have happened, and I know this isn't quite maybe on the exact topic of art, but it does talk about, like, the community side of Twitch. And I wanna go back to something I said earlier about how you're kind of doing yourself a disservice if you're not getting involved in the existing communities. Um, like, that wouldn't have happened, I don't think, if I hadn't made such a nuisance of myself in, like, every Twitch chat that I found. Like, I definitely was so, I wanted it started out with, like, I wanted to meet people I could raid into, right? Like, I'm a work safe streamer that's kind of niche on Twitch, it's kind of hard to find, especially in the art category. So I just kind of spent some time like looking for artists that were doing something different that maybe I felt like I could rate into. And then I started to find people I really connected with and I liked the way that they spoke or the way that they drew and I wanted to get to know them better. And it just kind of like turned into me just constantly just being in chats. And I think I met the right people and I feel really fortunate. But whether you decide to do something that has like a huge impact or even just a small impact, it's still an impact. Like I don't want anyone to think that, oh, I have to just, like, know so many people to do something like that. Just try, you never know, but you can't like, trying to do that into the void without ever having met somebody, I don't want anyone to feel discouraged because Twitch is not the discoverability on this platform is not good. Like, you pretty much have to get involved in community, to find your people. They're not gonna find you on Twitch.
Yeah.
Um so I would encourage people if you whether you're a streamer or whether you're a chatter, get involved in some communities that you really connect with. Get to know some people and then you might find that there's people doing cool stuff like this that maybe you want to get involved in. That
Yeah.
you might find the knowledge like go check out the Knowledge Fellowship.
Yeah.
I actually found the Knowledge Fellowship when I was first looking for people to stream into. Somebody, I think it was Science, told me about the Knowledge Fellowship or has like a command in his chat about it, and so I, like, went through that list and, like, "Oh, here's a philosopher. Oh, here's, like, Shane McInnes who does history. I'm really interested in what he does. Oh, I like his vibe," you know? Like, kinda went through the list and, like, found people who were teachers or people who were teaching topics that I, just wouldn't even think people would stream, and I found a lot of cool people that way.
Yeah.
So, like, do a little digging, find some folks, you
There's
just
some
never know.
cool stuff out there. I mean, I
There
looked through
is.
the Knowledge Fellowship list and I'm like, if you want to watch something that's really like chill and calm and relaxing, there's a guy who does watch repair, and like you get these like really
Nice.
cool like zoomed in views, and he's just talking very calmly about all these tiny little parts, and it's like that is something I
Yeah.
know people are probably really into because they love that sort of comfy streaming like in the background while you're doing
Mhm.
something else. I mean, you can watch people making pottery, you can
Yeah.
watch people teaching programming, you can watch people making music. There's stuff out there that's of substance, and it's not I'm not going to call it any specific big name streamers that do like just the sloppiest slop out there, or like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just it's a lot of brain rot, and you can do better for yourself. You're choosing to spend your time on the big screen on your good computer outside of your bad computer at work, the good screen as we call it. uh, you can watch something that's going to be cool and informative while you're playing Subway Surfers or whatever on the other screen, whatever it is you're doing. Do something that's going to at least put something of substance in your ear. You know, someone talking about something real. Maybe you learn about an animal that you want to help save. Something.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a random animal like the vaquita, maybe.
Yeah.
um,
Who knows?
yeah. Yeah, who knows? And I think Twitch is a cool platform, and I do want to just kind of like encourage, if for anyone out there who is like kind of wanting to get involved in stuff. Like, definitely don't just sit on the sidelines. And I think you could probably apply that to anything in life, but I do think like the education and the art sides of this platform specifically are I have found to be very good at encouraging that kind of question asking and curiosity and inclusiveness and just like I mean almost every education, not every, but almost every education stream that I've been into has been extremely like inclusive and like wanting people to be curious about the topic. Same thing with art streams for the most
Yes.
part. Like, there's a few that don't engage that much, but in general, I find that curious and enthusiastic people tend to gravitate toward the STEAM fields, right? Science, technology, engineering, art, music, all those things. So I
Yeah.
don't know. Check it out. I think it's an overlooked part of Twitch that I think
It really
deserves a lot
is.
more.
Because your other alternative is to let the algorithm decide for you, and
Yeah,
the
and they're not gonna.
algorithm will not make good choices for you. If
No.
you're waiting for the YouTube algorithm to show you something that's of substance and it's going to be interesting, I mean, they're going to feed you what they want you to see. So make the effort to actively curate what you're out there, because the more of that stuff you watch on Twitch and YouTube, the more of that stuff it's going to recommend you. You know,
Yeah,
the more
for sure.
good art streamers and stuff, the more science streamers, the more people talking about something really cool uh, that you watch, the more of that stuff it's going to give you, rather than just letting the generic algorithm do its work and, you know, show you Mr. Beast or whatever else is out there.
Gosh, yeah.
So yeah, take a little bit more active role in the content that you consume, because TikTok is going to show you tick slop. You know, that's what's going to
Right.
happen.
Yeah, I don't even go on TikTok, but yeah.
This has been a one of the more fascinating conversations, because I think we were able to have a really great wide range of topics. Because I think while it was primarily about art, there's just so much that art touches that is of
Sure.
relevance to us right now. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate you taking the time and having. I know it was a little longer than maybe we were planning, but I hope you're okay with that. It was perfectly
Yeah,
fine
it's
by me to
fine.
go this long. I really appreciate your time and letting us interview you for the Knowledge Fellowship Seminar Series. I'm going to wrap up with our spiel, which of course is
Sure.
if you are an educator, if you are someone who does any kind of educational content, you don't have to be a professional teacher. You don't have to have professional certification. If you are someone with a passion for educational content in any field, the arts, the sciences, whatever, check out the Knowledge Fellowship. It's an educational streamer collective where we try to promote and highlight and share educational content from some of these amazing educational streamers like Casey Snowart right here. This is a monthly series that I run called the TKF Seminar Series, where I interview one of our fantastic streamers and give them a platform, talk about what they do, just have a great conversation. Sometimes they'll give presentations, sometimes we'll do an interview format. If you are interested in being a guest on this show, hey, drop me a line, let me know. Join the Knowledge Fellowship Discord. Even if you aren't an educator, if you are someone who likes these kinds of streams, you can find more streamers. So whenever Casey Snow isn't live, you can find somebody else who's doing something great. Pottery, music, science, technology. You can find someone doing something really cool and informative and fun and educational. Um, my name is Mr. Aegis. I stream educational content, primarily health and wellness. My background is as a health educator. I will be next streaming about um, physical uh, physical activity and its psychological effects for a charity stream with VTuber Rita Kamashiro. We'll be raising money for mental health. She's a I don't know what their term is, a spokesperson for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. So we'll be doing a charity for them, and I'll be talking about the psychological effects of getting outside and doing some exercise. Um,
Nice.
and the next lesson after that, I think I'll be talking about cringe, because this is, uh, in terms of the art that we've been talking about, and being afraid of showing yourself, showing your art, being afraid of being perceived. We'll talk about the psychological consequences of cringe culture and our fear in the modern world, and especially in the younger generations, of being judged, and how much that's really harmful. And yes, it is a J, not a G. Uh, I decided to make it a J on my little logo, AEJIS. But I really appreciate all of your phenomenal followers. You have a great community, a lot of great raids. So we got to see a lot of great other art and educational streamers.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. For those of you who are watching on the Knowledge Fellowship channel, make sure that you are checking out Casey Snowart. Follow Casey Snowart. When do you usually stream so that people know where they can find you?
Yeah, thank you. I normally stream like if you want to show up for the art gym, those are probably the more educational ones. Those are in the morning. It's a kind of a start your day off with a study session, basically, is the idea, and to hold each other accountable, kind of like at the gym, but with art. So we do that Monday through Thursday at 9 a.m. Mountain Time until about 11 ish, sometimes 12, depending on how long we go. But usually it's like two ish hours in the morning. And then in the afternoons, I stream on Mondays and Wednesdays at this time slot. Usually it's around 4 to 8 ish Mountain Time, and it's more project based. But we do still talk about a lot of this stuff, and we have a community puzzle. Sometimes I'll do interactive streams as well, like creature design, character camp, like things that kind of challenge us to like prompts that chat picks, kind of things. And then every once in a while, I'll stream on like a Saturday or a Sunday with a game, but chat has to earn those, so they're pretty rare. But yeah, that's so my next stream will be tomorrow, actually, at 9 a.m. Mountain Time, and I'll be struggling tomorrow, actually. So if you come, I might need some encouragement, because I'll be tackling one of my arch nemesis in art, which is architecture. The topic
Mm,
tomorrow for Art Gym is famous buildings or famous structures. So if anybody wants to join, you can always draw and do a study of something else if that doesn't speak to you and you just want accountability. But I try to pick a different, pretty broad range of topics, everything from figure drawing to buildings to cars to animals. So we try to keep it kind of varied. So I'll be doing that tomorrow if anybody wants to come watch me struggle. But yeah, thanks for having me on, and thanks for yeah, just thanks for hosting this. If you have a link to your Discord that you want to drop, or like the TKF Discord that you want to put in chat, please feel free so that people can check it out. People who are watching the VOD or people here live now, I'm sure if some people are interested, we have a lot of people in our community that are kind of curious individuals, so I'm sure they'd be interested in checking that
yeah,
out.
and
Um,
your community is, honestly, it seems fantastic. So I will drop a link to my Discord there.
yeah,
This was fantastic. I love talking to especially people in the arts, um, because again, we've been lumped together in the educational world, in public schools at least. So
yeah,
I always felt like
yeah.
there was some kinship there, because God, if we would continue to fund the arts, I keep going back to thinking about God. Every school that has good arts programs, the students, they get better scores in every other subject. It's just wild.
Yeah, very important. Yeah, don't get me started on the teacher soapbox. But yeah, it's very discouraging seeing that. But no, thank you for sharing that, guys. Please check out the Discord and join. I'm sure there's a list to all the other TKF streamers on that Discord that they could find too. So please check it out. And if anyone's interested in following me anywhere, there's all my socials if anyone's
Yep.
curious. But
And the stream
thanks for having
team
us.
has all the TKF streamers, whoever is live. Um, but that's all that I have for you from our side and the Knowledge Fellowship side. Uh, we're going to head out, and we're going to let Casey Snowart continue on with their stream. Thank you so much for being here and for being a part of this stream. That has been the TKF Seminar Series. This was the 12th month, the 1 year of the TKF streams. So
Oh,
that's
nice.
all I have for you. Thank you so much
Yeah, well, thanks again.
for helping us out. We'll see you. Bye.
Have a good one. Bye. And goodbye to the chat as well.